I think last night kind of summed up why my Reds fandom is where it's at. All-Star game, Ohtani, big homer. Paul Skeens got to face Aaron Judge. Here we go. We're settling into things. 3 runs for the NL, 3 runs for the AL. Hunter Green is entering the game, folks. Here we go. He's a great Reds young star. Gives up the nice batting practice 2-run homer in the 5th. And you sit there and you think to yourself, oh, man, there's going to be more scoring, right? He's not going to get the loss in the All-Star game, is he? I mean, it's the 5th inning. We've already had, plenty of action here so far.
Stars everywhere.
And the bullpens just totally shut the opponent down. 5-3, the AL wins. Hunter Green with the big loss last night.
Well, what's funny about that is I did think about that when he allowed the big home run and then ultimately got the loss because I eventually passed out, so I saw that poor Hunter Green, you're right, 5-3, your final got the loss. He was the one that I was saying was the real Reds All-Star, not one of the fake All-Stars. And lo and behold, KB, I open my big mouth about the Reds, and their pitcher gets the loss. So there you go.
Welcome to Reds fandom. Welcome to the wake-up call with KB and Andy here on a Wednesday morning. Fever back in action. This is it until the Olympic break. We should mention, though, Saturday I think is going to be quite juicy, not only in the WNBA world, but in the sports world in general. Reminder, that is the WNBA All-Star Game, which follows the format much different than the NBA All-Star Game. The Olympic team, the U.S. Olympic team, will face, I guess you call them the WNBA All-Stars. Maybe you call them the second-tier All-Stars, just because obviously the U.S. Olympic team has a lot of those players on it. So Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese on the same team. That'll be Saturday night from Phoenix. Pacers will wrap up their summer league tomorrow. Well, I guess they got one more game. Doesn't every team make the tournament now that I think about it? We'll talk about their summer league action from yesterday, and Team USA back on the hardwood today. On paper, they'll face Nikola Jokic in Serbia. I say on paper because Serbia played yesterday. They actually lost to Australia. Australia beat them on a back-to-back. So still in the exhibition slate for Team USA as Tyrese Halliburton and company play game number 3.
Yeah, I mean, lot to talk about today. Will Haskett's going to join us. Cannot wait for that. We'll find out why Tiger Woods will or will not win the Open Championship. Now, we'll be coming in here tomorrow, and Mark, we better be ready. KB is going to be all in on the opening round of the Open Championship, right? Do we need to have a special monitor for you? Maybe we turn on the 75-inch TV that's been off for the last 3 months.
I think we only turn it on for major championships, so might as well.
Can we do that? I don't know.
Maybe the Olympic schedule will allow for a few more of the TV moments to be on. Yeah, it's not if he'll win, it's just how much.
It's about how much, right?
2, 4, 6,
Is it
8,
dominating?
Yeah.
Is it just a stroke or two? Is it 7 or 8 strokes? Some of the dominating performances. So we'll dive into that, and then
no financial compensation for you though. You're gonna.
It's all heart, baby.
Of course.
That's all you need.
All
heart overhead.
Uh-huh.
And then Brandon Aiyuk, the 49ers wide receiver, demanding a trade yesterday, and it was like I don't know, I will say a bomb, but it was like a ticking time bomb as soon as I saw Brandon Aiyuk has requested a trade from the 49ers, which of course means nothing unless someone comes through with just a ridiculous offer. The Niners are trying to win the Super Bowl. They have all the leverage. I'd imagine he'd be playing there at least this season. But it was like 3, 2, 1. I immediately saw should the Colts have waited? Should the Colts make a move? So we can dive into that as well. I think for me, I was interested yesterday a little bit on the reaction. It seemed like a lot of the Indy faithful, at least on Twitter yesterday, was watching the Summer League at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? I love a little daytime sports. I have no problem with it. Jarris Walker, my man Johnny Furphy with the big shot. I like Furphy.
Yeah,
I got to be honest. I think Furphy's good, man. I think he's really good.
Furphy showed me something. And honestly, I don't see defensive liability, which I think is what a lot of people kind of labeled him as exiting Kansas. Yeah, huge shot. 1 on the shot clock yesterday to put the game on ice. Kind of a chaotic possession. I'll credit Jarris Walker for making the extra pass there to get it eventually to Furphy for that play. So, again, I have no idea what it's going to look like for Furphy this season. I mean, it's probably a whole lot of... We are playing in Noblesville this year, right, for the G League?
Yeah, I think so. He's just got to get bigger. He's got to get stronger, but the dude knows how to play.
Has hit, shots. And, again, I feel like there's a little bit more to the other stuff in his game. kind of a la, some of the Ben Shepherd stuff that, again, maybe you didn't give full credit to the night of the draft. As far as Walker is concerned, I do want to start here. He continues to impress me offensively. And I know that's not top of mind thinking for myself. It's not top of mind thinking for the Pacers. But I do want to make sure we acknowledge it. Like, Jarace Walker has shot the three, whether it was Summer League last year, the brief snippets in the NBA last season, certainly his G League run last year, or now through 3 games of the Summer League. The guy can shoot the basketball. And I feel like he's a pretty good passer. I mean, sure, the turnover number is a tad high, but again, he's never going to be asked to be the number, or at least won't be asked to be the number 1 or 2 option offensively for the Pacers in quite some time. But I do want to start there. Like, offensively, I think the guy has some staying power in this league. And honestly, that was probably more the question of him entering the draft last year. Defense, yeah.
Well, at least through 3 quarters, the defense was not good enough, and he was being criticized. So, knowing that we were going to talk Jarace Walker, obviously, and Furphy and everything else, I was wondering what your conversation would be, because one thing, KB, that I was going to bring up is, defensively right now, you can make the case that you wanted to see more, right, in these games. I don't think that's a hot take. I know we'll play the sound during the checkdowns. Gennaro Pargo, the head coach there for the summer league team. I thought kind of said after the game that he thought Walker did, an okay job, a fine job defensively. It was different yesterday. They started him at the 2. I think the Pacers are in an odd spot with Walker, where they're still fully trying to figure out exactly what they have.
Well, as they should.
Yeah.
Like, when I saw Walker was playing yesterday, I literally was like,
yeah,
good. Like,
I think he should play one more game.
I think you play him tomorrow. Hell, I'd be fine with playing him in the random tournament game they're going to be in.
I don't disagree.
And to your point, I like a little bit of the outside of the box thinking yesterday. With Ben Shepherd gone, they have sent Ben Shepherd home. They started Walker at the 2 to try and defend smaller guards. And yes, I mean, all the resources at this point. Boy, I love Dakota Mathias. He's playing good basketball.
He is playing good.
Don't really care too much, if I'm going to be totally honest about it. So that's why I think all resources should be around trying to expose Walker into different situations, whatever, put him in uncomfortable spots, however you want to describe it. So I'll probably exit Summer League with Walker, continuing to be very impressed by what he can bring offensively and continuing to think, he's got a long way to go to be the defensive stopper or however you want to label him, because ultimately that's what's going to earn him a spot in the rotation. Going 3 of 5 from behind the arc. It's nice. It's good. It's not going to earn him minutes.
Yeah, I think what I was saying was it's interesting. I was wondering where you were going to go, because I think it is worth, and I know a lot of people were talking about his pull-up game and everything else yesterday. I do think Walker has shown offensively. Let's get to the defense here in a second. I mean, offensively, the guy can shoot. The guy, I think, can play make. You talk about him being in pick and roll situations offensively. I think his passing could be pretty good. I know he has turnovers. I think he's a little bit a fish out of water, probably doing the full handle that he's kind of doing at this level. But I think offensively, his game, and when you look at the Pacers, our guy JMV in the afternoons at 3 o'clock here on the Fan always says, don't F with the offense. I mean, that's been his thing through the trade deadline. And I think with Jarace Walker, you're not doing that. You can throw him in a game, and I use Obi Toppin as an example, even though Obi Toppin probably, given that Walker's playing the 2 and the 3, maybe he and Obi aren't going to overlap. You throw him on the floor, I feel good he's going to be able to score. I was disappointed by about 3 or 4 possessions yesterday defensively, and he even raised his hand to Jarace Walker when he got beat, KB. I don't know if you saw that, where he just got beat right to the bucket, man.
He's a reacher. He is. He's a reacher, and he's got this great length, and that's, again, what's supposed to help him defensively, and he's just got a long ways to go.
Yeah, he just does defensively. I was hoping, if you think he's a, I hate to say this, a D, a C, a C minus, whatever grade, maybe it's better than that, you would give him defensively. I think it is fair that we're probably going to exit Summer League feeling that we wish his defense were further along. Now, as far as like the hustle plays and some of the gritty things, that's kind of for the coaching staff, I think, to decide. You know, going back to game one, he was running high-low stuff where he's posting guys up, right? He's having bigs throw him the ball. Obviously, that's not the game plan yesterday. So I don't know if it's an incomplete. I mean, I see the rhetoric I see online is everything from he's not good enough defensively to we got to praise his offense to he's earned a spot in the rotation to I'm not sure if he's totally in the rotation yet. And the reality is they need him. I keep going back to that. This team is about taking the next step, not being complacent, not resting on their laurels, all of those sayings. And I think Jairus gives you a little bit something. I will say this last thing. Well, one of the last things on Jairus is, you know, I feel like because of Summer League and because of the end of the season and because of the things that have been said about him, you know, you wonder if we're focusing too much on Jairus Walker and not on Benedict Mathurin. Does that make sense? Like, everything's been about Walker this offseason. We need not forget that they have the rotation that went to the Eastern Conference Finals, and Benedict Mathurin is going to be back, and we need to not talk about Mathurin and Walker in the same sentence,
well,
right? I mean, Mathurin is at least an established player in this league.
Right, and that's why the conversation to me is totally different. Well, Mathurin has a spot in the rotation. Walker's got to earn it. I mean, to me, it's, again, two very different discussions here. Mathurin is going to get minutes. When we, plotted out the minutes thing we did a couple weeks ago, Mathurin had, I think I said 20, 25 minutes a game. Walker had 0. So,
right.
Yeah, to me, it's just two totally different combos with those two guys. But, yeah, I mean, with Walker, I mean, I asked Mark to pull out the Rick Carlisle clip, a couple days ago, and I thought the Carlisle comments said everything you needed to know. Yes, you continue to be impressed by what Jairus Walker can do offensively, but to earn a spot with this rotation, that doesn't carry as much weight. It's what he does defensively, and I think whenever it's done for him in Vegas, if yesterday was it, I'd like to see him continue to play. You're going to have those questions.
What do you think he's earned? What do you think? I mean, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
I think he's earned the odd man out when everyone's healthy. I mean, how do you squeeze him into the rotation?
Right.
How? I mean, you and I did the math game.
I know. So again, it's not that much different than last year then. Right, at least right now.
82 games, he will get plenty of looks. I mean, guys are going to miss time. Guys tweak ankles. I mean, he should and will get some minutes. But all of a sudden, looking at what he did in Vegas and saying, hey, Aaron Nesmith, we're chopping 12 minutes off your rotation because of that. Hey, Benedict Mathurin, we're going to take 8 away from you. No. Listen to Rick Carlisle's comments. I mean, I can't drill that in anymore. His comments made it clear. I don't care about the scoring. I don't care about the flash. In a way, they know that's there. They know they have that as a team. It's more the other stuff.
Well, how much does it matter that he's an odd man out being a top 10 pick when they've developed so many other guys?
Yeah,
right? Like, what does that mean if he is still the odd man out and needs an injury? And by the way, we don't even know what position he is, right? I mean, we truly don't know.
It's unfortunate, but, I mean, let's not act like this is, James Wiseman not playing for the Pistons. This is a good, young team still. So I don't think it's the end of the world. And again, inevitably, he will but he will get some sort of minutes based off how injuries occur. And we'll obviously be a little wait and see. But I don't think he's earned any sort of consistent clock here with this play in Vegas. Colts items to get to today. We'll continue to go up our indispensable list. Did you see they had their mini camp out in California, it looked like earlier this week?
I did see that, yes.
So pretty much everyone you would expect out there. You had Anthony Richardson, you had Jonathan Taylor. I would say of note, you had Michael Pittman Jr. and Alec Pierce participating. And Richardson, of course. I say that because all three of them missed that final week of minicamp with their respective injuries. Really a deep group of running backs and wideouts that were out there. And I think something that you should remember, a week from today is report day for Grand Park. I'm reminded when you see all those guys on the practice field, if you add it up, Andy, since Richardson's been drafted, last year you get about 12 practices during the spring. You get about another 20 in training camp.
Right.
Obviously the season's 18 weeks long, 17 weeks long. You take out the bye week, so there's 50 some. I mean, you got 70, 80 practices since Richardson has been drafted. if you were to tell me how many of those 70 to 80, Richardson, Taylor, and let's just say Pittman, but you could throw Pierce in there, have been healthy for,
You can count them on one hand.
it's probably less than 5.
Oh, it has to be because, Jonathan Taylor didn't practice at all, right? I mean, he didn't practice at all leading up to the season. Then he missed the first 4 weeks, and then by the time he was back, Anthony Richardson was out.
And then, of course, Taylor's healthy this spring,
Yeah.
and that's where Richardson, or Pittman, I should say, exits day 2 of OTAs with that knee injury. And then, of course, Richardson misses time there late. Obviously, when Taylor got healthy last season, that was when Richardson was out for the year. So just the fact that the main 3, and if you want to stretch it to Pierce, just the fact that they're healthy is probably not something to take for granted. And, reps on task, I guess in a way, it's kind of about Jarris Walker in Vegas. Like, I just want to see him out there for different reasons. It's vital that, Richardson and Taylor and Pittman are healthy and participating. So a good sign on that end as we are a week away from everybody descending back onto Grand Park for the start of training camp.
Are you going to be up there with your notepad being a scribe during training camp, asking all the players if they're playing the college football video game that every media member and every player has been asked about over the last 48 hours?
I will laugh at some of the memes.
I mean, my goodness. Every single media member's out there, giving a screenshot of them playing with BYU and starting a fantasy dynasty.
Have you purchased?
Or whatever. I'm not going to purchase it.
Oh.
No, I don't think
I thought you said you were.
I don't think I'm going to purchase it. Well, I just, it's a little bit, it's enough
now,
on my timeline. It's enough.
We should mention here, and I believe I said this to you guys yesterday in the opening segment, and I guess we can just read her statement here. It was confirmed from her yesterday when old Ingrid sang the national anthem on Monday in the home run derby. I said to you guys yesterday, I literally thought she was drunk.
Okay.
And
yeah.
I thought when she hit that land of the free note, that's when I thought, oh boy, she's definitely drunk. Like, there is no debate. Like, this is not just off. I mean, she tried to hit the free note like 6 different times. Lo and behold, yesterday, she releases that statement. I'm not going to BS, and I believe it was the full BS. Y'all, I was drunk last night. I'm checking myself into a facility today to get help that I need. That was not me last night. I apologize to Major League Baseball, the fans, and this country I love so much for that rendition. I'll let y'all know how rehab is. I hear it's super fun. I'm not PR 101 or writing press releases. I thought very thoughtful, but that last sentence, I'll let you know how rehab is. I hear it's super fun. I feel like that took the tone from serious to
You think so?
Wait, am I still drunk here on this Tuesday morning?
Well, can I ask you this, and I mean this, if she has a drinking problem in any way and she's going to get it fixed in any way, good for her. I cannot tell if she is telling the truth. I am not the judge, the arbiter of such things. I did see that come out yesterday, but I didn't know, and this is not me being insensitive, why, if she was intoxicated, why did that make her sing so poorly? Does that make sense? I don't know. Is it always a correlation? I guess that's my question.
Well, she can't be the first singer to be under the influence.
Under the influence. I'm sure all these performers at times are under the influence of something, and none of them completely bombed the way she did.
Well, I'm not, certainly.
I don't know why I'm going to you for this answer, but I am.
I've never been asked to answer a question on why people after a few drinks struggle singing. I've been in some karaoke bars in my day. I've been to a bachelor party or two. I've seen my wife try to execute a song or two.
Oh, nice. What's her song?
After a couple drinks. It doesn't sound great, if I'm going to be honest, so I guess that's Ingrid. I don't know what these musical acts are ingesting per se to lead to being under the influence, but clearly this is a song that I don't think she's singing the national anthem many times after a few drinks. So
probably.
Hopefully Ingrid gets the help that she needs. And
well, now do we feel bad? I mean, everyone made fun of her for almost 24 hours. She had to do something.
Again, I mean that was my first thought. I'm like, she's got to be drunk. I mean the land of the free note
Yeah, maybe she was nervous too. I don't know. Maybe
I didn't even.
She drank for the nerves. I don't know.
I turned it on at intros last night. Did we get a national anthem last night on TV?
I missed that, so I don't know. I
Did
would
they
imagine
hide
we did. I don't know.
Can we tape this at 2 in the afternoon and then play it live?
We'll just re-rack it later on. Now, what's your wife's song? Quickly before we go to break, does she have a go-to? I had a buddy, Piano Man was always his thing.
Yeah, she's a big Picture fan, which is obviously a duet song.
Okay,
but she's a big Picture. She there's been times again where the drinks have led to I can do both parts.
I was about to say, who does the second part? Is that where you walk up there? Is there a friend involved?
I stick to Eminem, Lose Yourself.
Yeah, I figured as much. So, good stuff all around. Going to be a busy show today. Help me, and I apologize. Our 9:30 guest, what's her name?
Yeah, Sam Peszek. Going to join us. Former Olympian, 2008 Olympian with Shawn Johnson.
She's won everything.
And that team, yes.
She's won absolutely everything.
Very decorated. She is going to be the color commentator for the Olympics with Terry Gannon. And that, again, is one of the more watched Olympics. She did outstanding work here. Indy native. Outstanding work on the U.S. trials. So throw some Simone Biles questions her way. The general U.S. team, non-Biles storyline. So before she heads off to Paris, Sam Peszek going to join us here coming up at 9:30.
Yeah, so we'll keep the Olympic stuff going with that. All right, let's take a break. The score is the sound from last night. All-Star Game, Pacers, Summer League, and much more. Your morning check down. It's coming up next. Appreciate you hanging out with us until 10 o'clock. It's a Wednesday here on The Fan. Is it worth it? Do I need to be?
Brandon Aiyuk of the 49ers demanding a trade. Could the Colts factor in at all? We'll hit that coming up in a few. For now, though, let's go ahead and check it down.
Yeah, KB, let's start with the Summer League. How about this? Now, wins and losses don't always matter, but, well, they don't in the Summer League. They do in the regular season and everything else. But, the Pacers come back. They get the first win there in Vegas, 98-94, coming from behind there in the second half. Really good second half for the Pacers group. Obviously, we've talked a lot this morning, about Jarris Walker. 19 points, had the 4 rebounds, 5 assists, played more at the 2, and his head coach, Gennaro Pargo, talked about his game after the game.
We want to see him guard, smaller guys, be disruptive on the ball. We thought putting him at the 2 would give us a better chance to see that. We thought he did a great job of being up in our defensive pressure, and we also try to put him in pick and rolls to see if he can make plays, not only for himself, but for others as well. We thought he did a good job.
Yeah, so the 19 points, it's been pretty good. 25 points, 15 points, 19 points in the 3 games for Walker over the last week or so. Johnny Furphy, pretty good. Hit 4 threes yesterday, hit the game winner. He had 18 points. He had 8 rebounds. I think he showed the ability to grab some boards, to hit the open shot at times. So Walker, Furphy, not too bad yesterday.
Yeah, if I had to rank the draft picks, who I've been most impressed by, I'd go Furphy, Enrique Freeman, and then Tristan Newton.
I totally agree, yeah.
That's where I'd go on those 3 draft picks. Tomorrow, 4:30 for the Pacers. They're scheduled to have one more game in Vegas after that. All right, last night it was a Summer Classic. Paul Skeens did get to Aaron Judge there in the first. The Juan Soto at-bat was pretty funny, watching some of those swings and misses by Soto there. Ended up walking him. Got Judge to ground out, though, on the first pitch. So it was 3 outs and 4 batters, 2 ground outs and a fly ball. How many times do you think Skeens has had an inning without a strikeout in the last year?
It's a great question. I'd love to know. He probably had a couple with the Pirates and a couple, maybe a couple innings here. And that's about it, man. It's not many.
They did it a little bit last night. I don't know if you caught Paul Skeens on Dan Patrick earlier this week. The story of him is quite remarkable. Like, this is not decorated 5-star recruit, every SEC school pounding the door down, and him and Livy Dunn have been stars for years. Like, no, the dude was at the Air Force, wasn't even a pitcher initially in college, was only at LSU for 1 year. And so this is not this like can't miss prospect all throughout. And you listen to his conversation, again, it seems like a pretty humble guy and down to earth, and not someone you expect to be dating the whatever, the Instagram model or however you want to describe Livy Dunn there. So Paul Skeens, nice outing. It was the AL 5, the NL 3. Shohei Ohtani did hit a 3-run bomb there in the top of the 3rd. And as Reds fans would have it, it's Hunter Green leaving the All-Star game with a loss.
Are you going to abandon being a Reds fan? Are you going to abandon following this team?
Thanks, Reds.
Ellie De La Cruz did get a hit.
What'd you guys think of the uniforms?
Hideous.
They're obviously
absolutely hideous.
Yeah, so Rosie couldn't sleep. I'm like, all right, you can watch an inning with me. And of
Put her
course,
right to bed.
She's like, Daddy, who are we cheering for? I'm like, well, to be honest with you, I don't know what those colors are. Would you call that red or orange? Would you call that green or blue? I was struggling.
Yeah,
with the jersey colors.
I didn't like them. I mean, I kind of agree with all the people on Twitter. Just give them their normal uniforms, but make, the AL wearing their white uniforms and then the uniforms with color, put it on the other team, and let's do it that way like we used to back in the day. But
because even the hats were hard to see too.
Very confusing.
Wait, who's that? Oh, okay, that's Corbin Burns. Like, you could barely see the Orioles logo on the hat.
I did like they had Trey Turner. They had the Phillies guys mic'd up. This was early in the game, maybe second inning.
Yeah, Harper
something
was
like
mic'd
that.
Up, wasn't he?
Yeah, Harper and I'm blanking. Trey Turner and I'm blanking on
Alec Boehm, however you say it.
That's it. They had those 3 guys mic'd up, and Trey Turner made like a web gem. KB, he made a diving play to his left, and you could hear him, breathing and grunting, if you will, while he made that play. So that was pretty cool live TV. At least he didn't boot it off his foot.
No, he's not. He doesn't play for the Reds. He made the play.
Well, excuse me, I didn't see the Cubs highlight the All-Star game by any means.
Shota Imanaga did just fine. He didn't give up any runs.
Ellie De La Cruz with a hit yesterday. Tonight, 7:30, the final game before the Olympic break for the Indiana Fever. They're playing the worst team in the league. That's the Dallas Wings. The Wings started the year I think it was 3-2, and they're 2-17 since then.
Oh my God!
So I honestly look at the line, 4.5, and think to myself, wait a minute.
Oh boy!
Should this even be higher? Now we said the same thing a week ago Wednesday.
I know.
Take care of business. You didn't do it in your own building at all. Very important. I think if you end tonight with a win, you feel very good about the first half of the season. We did not. We certainly didn't say that at Memorial Day, but it's been a much different team here over the last month and a half. So just take care of business tonight. Make sure you end on a positive note. All-Star weekend coming up for Caitlin Clark, Kalia Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell, and then deserved and needed time off for the Fever, especially number 22.
So they should win tonight, but the rhetoric has to scare you a little bit, right? Like, we just did this with the Fever. We've done it a couple times this season. We've remarked, both of us on here, it's only 4.5, and that seems too many. Or when, the Fever have been, they're 8.5-point dogs and then lose by 12 or something like that. And we did this a lot with the Pacers, right?
I'd like to
just
hope,
win tonight.
And you are spot on with all that. But I'd like to hope last Wednesday,
Yep.
wake-up call. On the road, maybe less I don't know. I'm grasping here, but less distractions.
They have the same amount of fans in Dallas that they're going to have in Cambridge.
It's a fair point. It is the first game with the Wings tonight. So again, 7:30 ESPN for that.
Yeah, one more for me. Team USA basketball back in action against Serbia today, noon on FS1. What did you say was Serbia? They played yesterday.
Serbia lost.
They lost
to
Australia. How about that?
Australia played on a back-to-back after playing the U.S. on Monday. Now Serbia will play on a back-to-back. Jokic played yesterday. Had a fine game. Didn't dominate by any means. So I'll be curious to see, how much Serbia plays. And is there a point in time with Team USA here, the exhibition slate, does Steve Kerr say, hey, we're going to rest whatever, Steph, LeBron, whoever else you categorize in that category, and, really play the young guys? We still have yet to see Derek White since he was invited to Team USA. Kevin Durant has still been out. So just a couple questions on that end for the U.S.
You got to think that you see Derek White in this game, don't you think? And then
they have two more exhibitions after, but I would think you got to see him.
And I'm wondering what they do with Curry. He just hasn't, I'm not worried about his shot. He's just been a little bit off. So you wonder, and no one knows Steph Curry as well as Steve Kerr does. So we'll find out what happens. Again, that one coming up noon on FS1.
One more Caitlin Clark note. Did you happen to see that she will be on the NASCAR of one Josh Berry this weekend?
I did. Have you seen the print? She is on the hood,
so
taking
it's
a jumper.
her shooting a 3 at Iowa. So not Fever. When I first saw the headline, I thought, oh, this is like country music star plays in Indy and comes out in a Caitlin Clark jersey, but like times 10. I mean, like this is on a NASCAR, but it's not even a Fever picture. Panini, the card company, that is who is partnering here with Josh Berry's team to be on the car. I guess this has happened a couple other times in NASCAR.
Yeah, but why is she in an Iowa jersey? Is there a
copyright
copyright
issue
issue
with the Panini card company?
Okay.
Like the card that they are advertising is her in an Iowa jersey.
And she also got, and a lot of athletes have NIL deals with Panini in college.
And it's a popular NFL thing. You see this quite often with rookies that just get drafted. They go out to L.A. and Panini invites them out there. They sign a bunch of cards, et cetera, et cetera. So Caitlin Clark will not be here for the Brickyard. She's going to be out in Phoenix for those all-star activities. But Josh Berry, I'd never heard of him before yesterday. He's the rookie of the year points leader. I cannot find any ties to Iowa for him, but nonetheless, he's going to be rocking. He's got 4 top 10s in the year, so maybe he'll make a run to the front and get the crowd roaring over there at IMS this week.
It is funny. I saw Josh Berry, and I'm like, I don't follow NASCAR, but I don't know who that is. And I'm like, I wonder if Mark or KB know who Josh Berry is. Does he have an Indy connection? Who the hell is this young man? Well, good for him.
Mark, have we heard back on Kyle Larson for this week?
They just asked what days and times we were interested in. I've not heard anything back in 48 hours now. So we'll see.
All right, so we'll see on that. All right, let's take a break. Coming up on the other end, Brandon Aiyuk wants a trade out of San Francisco. Is that a conversation we should even be talking about with the Colts? We'll discuss that next on this Wednesday. Thanks for hanging out with us. Wake Up Call 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
How much will Tiger win by? That'll be the question I'll toss Will Haskett's way when he joins us at 8:30. I must say this quickly about the British Open beginning tomorrow morning. I am very much bummed out with the new golf major schedule and how the LIV Tour has operated. That, like, this is it for 9 months to get all the guys together. And, like, that's a little sappy, a little sentimental, but, like, I hate that for golf. I hate that.
I agree. The four things matter all season.
The PGA Championship, first off, used to be in August, so the calendar would be a little bit longer for the major season. That's one part of it. And then again, I am not just ripping LIV for this. Obviously, the PGA Tour is at fault as well for some of that. But I hate that because I do think we've gotten great drama. I mean, look at the U.S. Open. That was unbelievable drama between Rory McIlroy and Bryson DeChambeau at the last major. And unfortunately, after Sunday afternoon, we won't have that again until the Masters coming up in April. So Will Haskett going to join us here coming up at 8:30. All right, the news yesterday, NFL world, Brandon Aiyuk demanding, am I using the right word there? Demanding a trade.
Well, requesting a trade is probably the technical term, but he ain't happy.
Colts' interest should be what?
Listen, I like Brandon Aiyuk. He's a name that we talked about. I guess a couple questions I have for you and the audience. Is it fair? And I saw this yesterday. So, I don't know, it was noon, 1, 2 o'clock, whatever it was. Brandon Aiyuk, that news comes out. And let's be real for a second. Unless someone's like, yeah, we'll give you 3 1s and a 2 for Brandon Aiyuk. I mean, the guy's not going anywhere this season. I mean, the 49ers are trying to win a Super Bowl. They went through this with Deebo Samuel. We have seen this with other players. Brandon Aiyuk has absolutely zero leverage. He can go and sit out a year and become irrelevant like Le'Veon Bell. If he wants to do that and spike his career, he can do that. He's not going to do that. So I think he will play very much for the 49ers unless a team comes up over the top and just offers ridiculous money. The news came out also yesterday. I guess the New England Patriots had checked in over the last couple weeks on Aiyuk. And, of course, that would be funny. You would go to a place with a terrible quarterback situation. I have no idea. I mean, their offensive coordinator has been a revolving door of crap, basically, for a number of years. Unproven head coach. Again, no quarterback, no skill positions. So, I mean, New England's not a very good team. Let me ask you this. Is it fair? Because immediately when this came out, and I saw Bob Kravitz tweet this out, but he is not the only one that, we could talk about this, but there's no reason to because it's the Colts and because it's Chris Ballard and he's not going to make this type of move. And I just don't know. Overall, that rhetoric has been very fair, that criticism. The lack of moves in free agency, and when he's made trades, you go to DeForest Buckner. Boy, that sure seemed to work out well. In this instance, I don't know if that is fair. And then on top of it, this was when you paid Michael Pittman Jr. and you paid him early. You talked a lot about that, Kevin, in the process. It was going to eliminate flexibility kind of more as you got towards the season. But you can't pay everyone. When you're paying a running back big-time money and then you throw in the Michael Pittman Jr. contract, my question would be if you want to give back the Jonathan Taylor money and maybe not have that and have much a cheaper rotation there at running back. If you want, Trey Sermon and Devin Singletary to be your 2 running backs or a re-signing of Zach Moss and Trey Sermon to be your running backs, fair enough. But I think this area likes JT. You just can't. It's not fantasy football. That's how I view it. And this is, a guy that's going to want $30 million a year, probably. He's going to want to be paid as a top 5 wide receiver. I like Brandon Aiyuk, but he's not a top 5 wide receiver in the league. He's not.
Do you put any stock into the Colts reportedly having interest in Justin Jefferson, reportedly having interest in wanting to trade into the top 10 for a wideout?
I do, but they didn't do that, right? They end up drafting A.D. Mitchell, and they gave Michael Pittman, what is it, about $23.5 million a year.
So do those moves eliminate that desire?
To me, they do, along with Jonathan Taylor. Again, along with Jonathan Taylor's position is not a premium position, and he's being paid as an offensive weapon, and you can only pay so many offensive weapons. I guess what I'm trying to say is there's probably going to be criticism because people are pissed off at Chris Ballard, and I get that. But to me, making a move for Brandon Aiyuk is not where I would lay the criticism for Chris Ballard and the Colts. I don't see them being involved at all. Do you?
Part of me says no to answer the question, I guess, in a somewhat direct manner. Is there any of me that's trying to play devil's advocate here? Perhaps a little bit. I go back to a Ballard comment, the audio we played probably just a couple weeks ago. Remember when he was on Michael Lombardi's podcast, and he said something to the effect of, you don't overpay for good players. Like, in a way, I think Brandon Aiyuk might qualify as that. Good wideout. Really nice wideout.
Yeah, very good player. Right.
But to your point, you're having to give him major money and some sort of draft pick compensation. Now, we've talked about Aiyuk now for a handful of minutes. We probably could have stopped the conversation right at the start. He's got no leverage. He is in the Michael Pittman draft. So kind of picture contract timelines with that. Now, he's a first-round pick, so that means the 49ers have a team option on him coming up for next season as a fifth-year option. And then they could franchise tag. So, I mean, they really
Good luck.
are in full team control. And we have seen this song and dance a bit from San Francisco star players and the team. We saw it with Deebo Samuel a few years ago. We saw it with Nick Bosa. Now, we were stuck in our own Jonathan Taylor contract world, so we probably didn't pay as much attention to it. But timelines, spur action. And so I tend to think that this will play out with Brandon Aiyuk back in San Francisco. From a Colts standpoint, I do think they seem pretty bullish on wanting to see A.D. Mitchell. I mean, they have been very outspoken in describing him, talking about the unique traits he brings, and is different, really, than any wideout they have. If you want to look at finances, a Bernard Ryman extension, I would assume, is upcoming here next year, and that's going to make things even tighter. So, to go back to the question I asked you, Jefferson pursuit, however you want to describe that pursuit, potentially trying to trade in the top 10, however you want to describe that. Finances have gotten a lot tighter since those two discussions potentially happened.
Exactly.
Again, they have re-signed so many guys in that 2 and 3 year window that it almost seems like their chips are kind of in the middle of the table with this group. Now,
it feels like the Pacers in that respect.
Yeah, a little bit there. Now, I still think they should, need to explore the big swing at wideout at some point. They would counter and say, again, we're going to watch our current group and see how that grows. But, I'm much more of a believer in, Josh Allen needed Stephon Diggs. Tua needed Tyreek Hill. Jalen Hurts needed A.J. Brown. Like, those moves, I think the Colts need to explore that at some point. I don't necessarily think that Aiyuk maybe is the poster child of that. But these are things that I want to see them have interest in. I don't stand on the table for it. But I also don't want to make sure that just every wideout that pops up, you just simply say, oh, no, they can't make that work. No, I mean, you can squeeze some things and, finagle your way into making something work. It's just how the Colts typically operate. They don't do these things.
Yeah, listen, I like Brandon Aiyuk. If you told me tomorrow we were walking in here and then, later on that day we go to Back 9 on a Thursday, again, if you want to find tickets, 1075thefan.com, and Brandon Aiyuk, the rumors are hot and heavy that the Colts are going to make a move and they've been quiet about it. Listen, I would love that. Colts fans would love that. Let me ask you this. You were... I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you were pro waiting a little bit on having to re-sign Michael Pittman Jr. In other words, there was no hurry to do so. He could have played this year under the franchise tag that you wanted to see, especially around draft time in April, KB, how things were going to work out. Do you feel the same now that we're in mid-July? In other words, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say the issue is that deadline was what? Monday, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically,
we saw it with T. Higgins. So basically how it works is if you franchise tagged a guy back in the spring, you had until Monday, ironically enough. That was the deadline to re-sign those guys on long-term deals. So the Bengals did not get that done with T. Higgins. So, in Cincinnati's case, they're giving the big money to Jamar Chase. They're going to play it out with Higgins for 1 year, and then in all likelihood, of course, he walks, and we'll see how their wideout position operates. So, yeah, I wanted them to – no, I didn't want them to wait till July.
Right.
I mean, I wanted them to get it done right after the draft because to me, that's when a lot of this stuff, it just fizzles out. A lot of the rumors, a lot of the, the A.J. Brown trade happened the first night of the draft. A lot of that stuff ends kind of in early May. And I'll go back to something we said to open up the show. By all accounts, based off social media yesterday, out in California, the Colts had their little mini camp. So, Richardson throwing, which is obviously a good sign, with guys like Pittman and Pierce and A.D. Mitchell and Josh Downs, et cetera, et cetera. And to me, it's important that these guys just flat out get reps because, again, they have not been on the practice field very often because of the health issues or contract issues with Taylor and then, health-related with Richardson and then Pittman in the spring. So I wanted to see that deal for Pittman done by the start of May, so he still could have participated in the spring, which obviously he ended up doing there. So that's where I was in regards to franchise tag and waiting. Again, the Aiyuk thing seems like a lot of player-driven smoke, and I don't think they sit in a great leverage point. Like, if you look at the Colts and Taylor's leverage was, you're not a good football team and you have a rookie quarterback.
Right.
The 49ers are not in now. You could create some leverage and say, well, it's a Super Bowl window. It's shrinking. Like, they need Aiyuk to play. But still, they're not as desperate as I thought the Colts were, given the positions are very different, wide out and running back, and their impact there. So I think at the end of the day, Andy, when we get to August 17th, September 17th, Brandon Aiyuk will be with the 49ers.
Yeah, imagine not paying Michael Pittman and having that scuttle going on, and imagine Ballard not drafting a wide receiver high in the draft.
Sure.
Okay,
and it would send,
us sitting around here and saying, "Oh, go get Devontae Adams or Brandon Aiyuk mid-July."
And I get it would send a very confusing, complicating message to your team, to your wideout room, if you let Pittman play out the franchise tag and you went out and made the big splash for Brandon Aiyuk.
Right.
Pittman would be
What
like,
does that
"Wait,
say?
what the hell?"
I know.
It's different with Cincinnati, where clearly Jamar Chase is better than T. Higgins. Like, that's obvious. Aiyuk and Pittman, it's probably not as crystal clear.
Yeah, I would rather have Pittman for 23 than Brandon Aiyuk for 30 to 32. That's just me. And
Plus
I think,
draft picks.
Yeah, plus picks, and I think Aiyuk is still a really good player. All right, we'll take a break. On the other end, coming up in the 8 o'clock hour, we're at number 3 on our most indispensable Colts player. We'll dive into that. Will Haskett at 8:30. Appreciate you hanging out with us on this Wednesday.
Talk a little British Open with Will Haskett here in 30. I'm a little disappointed with the Pacers, Andy Sweeney.
Okay, why is that?
I feel like we've missed the opportunity to honor my legend, and I felt like yesterday was another missed opportunity on that end. News item in the NBA circles yesterday that the one and only Patrick Beverley will be playing basketball next year in Israel.
Yes, sir. 36 years old, Pat Beverley, going over to Israel. He said, they gave me everything I wanted.
Why
Good for him.
Have we yet to acknowledge and honor the man or woman that had the 1, 2, 3 Cancun chants that supposedly led to Beverly's fuse being set off and multiple tosses of basketballs into the crowd? I believe he struck a lady. We certainly can honor her.
I know.
But whoever ignited this out of Beverly as his last NBA moment, the Pacers need that. Rev up the IndyCar. Yes, that needs to happen. I saw the Bucks are in the you see the in-season tournament groups were announced.
Oh,
Did you happen to see that?
I
the
saw
Bucks
it.
are in the Pacers group.
You're damn right they are. The NBA knows what they're doing.
Maybe we wait till game 1. I mean, Beverly will be in Israel. He'll have a big game in Israel that night. So missed opportunity from the Pacers.
You bring out that family, or bring out the woman that got struck in the head by Pat Beverly, and
Kevin Pritchard presents game balls.
Absolutely,
Steve Simon can present game balls. Boomer, I don't care who it is.
A signed jersey, a golden basketball, whatever you want to give.
James
these
Johnson
people.
Was it Oscar Shibwe that was supposed to have the game ball? If you want to go back to the early in season issues between these two teams, so. Nothing I love seeing more than Patrick Beverley off to Israel.
Yeah, like I said, he did say they gave me everything I want. So that means this had to be the best deal he had on the table. And then I'm trying to remember, was it 2 games or like 5 games that he got suspended for throwing the ball in the crowd here in Indy? Do you remember?
I thought it was more in the 5-ish range.
I thought it was too, because I thought it should have been a 10-game suspension or 7 or 8
he did it twice
or something. He did it twice, and he hit people both times. One of the times could have been pretty bad.
4.
Oh, was it 4 games? Well, there we go. The jokes yesterday. Hapoel, I don't know how you say this. Tel Aviv, BC. That's where he's going to be playing next year. And what I find eternally funny. Now, I know Pacer fans, you made the Eastern Conference Finals. You got Halliburton locked up. You got Pascal Siakam, Obi Toppin. Still got some young players. Like, all the things to feel good about. Winning Game 7 against the Knicks and MSG. So many things to feel good about. To me, and KB, I mean this. Besides, you could say, the emergence of Tyrese Halliburton, okay? I think the greatest story of this past season for the Pacers, is how they ruined the Milwaukee Bucks. They were in their heads. They beat them on the floor. They beat them in the in-season tournament. They beat them in the playoffs. You tell me. To me, it ruined. And Giannis flipping out and running down the hallway. All the Pat Beverly stuff. Now he's off to Israel. They ruined the Milwaukee Bucks. They exposed them and they ruined their season. And to me, that's number 1.
Greg, give yourself a pat on the back for this. He tweets at us and says, "Tel Aviv on 3."
I bet they paid him, though.
Great work.
I don't know what his normal contract would be if he joined in. Now it would be a back end of the roster, some sort of veteran deal that he would get somewhere.
Is not, Steph Marbury with the, Beijing Sharks or whoever playing overseas. Colts indispensable list. We are up to number 3. Andy Sweeney so far for me. I had Kenny Moore the second. At number 5, I had DeForest Buckner. At number 4, that is what my list has looked like. Again, guys you cannot afford to lose. Kenny Moore, 5, DeForest Buckner, 4. Where have you gone so far?
Yeah, number 5, I had Michael Pittman Jr. At number 5, I had Kenny Moore yesterday. We talked about him at number 4, and I fear we may have the same guy at number 3.
Okay.
Which could be good and bad.
Again, this name for me,
number 3.
Thank you, Mark. I wouldn't label this guy as the 3rd best Colt. I think he's a quality player, but I don't think he would earn that label. But when you're talking indispensable, you have to look at the depth chart. And I've said it for months now. There's no position group that I have more worry about short-term and long-term than this one. That would be safety. So number 3 on my most indispensable would be Julian Blackmon.
Yeah.
Freshly married Julian Blackmon.
Oh, when did he get married last week?
Looked like over the weekend, yeah.
Oh, good for him. Where was that at? Do you
looked
have
very
any
nice.
idea?
I don't know if Utah ties.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was back in Utah.
Yeah, I don't know where, but it
good for him.
looked beautiful. We have several Colts teammates in the building.
Yeah, to me, it's Julian Blackmon as well.
You got him 3 too?
Yeah, I actually do.
Did you look at my list?
Well, I knew your list. I listened to your podcast, so of course I knew your list. Now we
Regular
have,
P1 over here.
How
for
about
listening.
That? I mean, and you put it up on the website. I just here's my thing. I Blackmon, to me, I think our analysis is going to be the same here. So I knew that going in. I'm trying to search for different analysis just because after him at safety, I just don't know where they go. And you can go back, of course, to the end of the year against C.J. Stroud and the Texans and everything else. But, I mean, there was a reason they needed to bring him back. He's on that 1-year deal. He's 25 years old, so he's going to be on a prove-it deal. I view that room as being shaky. And let's be honest, when you look at the defensive backfield, safety and corner for the Colts, if you told me they were a relatively healthy team and Anthony Richardson played and they didn't have any big-time injuries or big-time drama during the season, but you told me, Andy, they still fall short and don't make the playoffs, I would point first to the defensive backfield of the Colts and saying, over a 17-game schedule, it's a long season, they just weren't good enough. That's why. Is Kenny Moore the best corner? No, but I had him in our top 5 because Kenny Moore, while being a damn good player, I don't know about guys at corner. I feel the same way with safety. Perhaps a Nick Cross or somebody else emerges, but, I think Julian Blackmon, besides Kenny Moore, is the second best player probably in that defensive backfield. And you saw what happened at the end of last year. To me, the guy top 10 in interceptions last year. He's a really good player. So I have him in number 3. I thought about, quite frankly, having him a little bit higher on my list.
Yeah, I feel like if Julian Blackmon does not get hurt against Atlanta, the Colts are in the playoffs.
It's a fair statement.
Think that's hyperbole. I truly believe that with his presence on the field there. I mean, hell, you almost lost to the Raiders without him, but I think his presence would have been different in that Week 18 game with Houston. Career season for him last year, and again, remember, position switch. So another thing to add to kind of the pro bullet points on Julian Blackmon, you're talking about a guy that has been versatile throughout his NFL career, has played both safety spots, and he's very trustworthy as a communicator. And I think that has probably been one of Nick Cross's bigger issues, is that there's a lack of trust communication-wise with him back there. So yeah, to me, Julian Blackmon, again, he is kind of the poster child for this sort of list in that, yes, he's a good player, but also it's a position group that just lacks so much trustworthy depth. I've said this for several months now. I feel better about corner than I do safety. I think corner, you actually have a couple of guys that, yeah, I can sit in the back of the room and listen to the presentation. And if I squeeze my eyes, I can be like, okay, I've squeezed my eyes a lot, frankly, because I have horrible eyesight. I can kind of see where you're coming from.
Right.
Safety,
it's harder to be convinced.
I just walk out of the room and think, what the hell? Like, what? I mean, that makes no sense to me. So, Julian Blackmon, indispensable Colt, yes, certainly. Number 3 on the list. Kenny Moore, 5. DeForest Buckner, 4. Julian Blackmon, 3. And I will tease that I'll go offense for my last 2 here on my list.
Yeah, well, I can tease that as well. I'm going to go offense, but we're not going to have the same. We're not going to have the same guys.
Did you think? Okay, defense. Did you think Zaire Franklin at all?
I did. I don't mind mentioning it. So Grover Stewart is not on my list, and DeForest Buckner wasn't on my top 5. I would say I probably went Buckner closer to 6 as a guy that just missed my top.
Why no Buckner? Because there's more depth at defensive tackle?
Yeah, basically. I mean, he's a great player. I mean, obviously, he could be an all-pro player. That was kind of my thing, is they've put so many resources there on the defensive line. I probably had Grover Stewart more like 8-ish, something like that. I don't want to spoil it too much, but yeah, I had him right outside my top 5. Jalen Simpson, who got drafted in the 5th round out of Auburn. I'm trying to remember. So the other 5th rounder, Jalen Carlisle's, the kid from Missouri, they're using him as more of a linebacker, right?
Correct,
They're
yeah.
moving him more towards the line of scrimmage.
He's the one that picked off Flacco during the spring.
Exactly. Simpson, though, he's going to be a safety, right? I mean, is there a chance he lines up next to Blackman?
I thought I
Or
saw.
is he moving down as well?
I thought I saw more corner out of him in the spring than I saw safety.
Okay.
Yeah, I know some people have mentioned kind of safety for him. I haven't seen as much of that. I mean, right now, if you're going to tell me pick a backup safety behind Julian Blackman and Nick Cross, it'd probably be Ronnie Harrison Jr. And then maybe Rodney Thomas II. So, maybe the Daniel Scott injury, the torn Achilles late in the spring, maybe that alters something for Jalen Simpson. But that was something I tried to take note of kind of late in the spring once Scott went down of like, okay, where, and I could have sworn I thought Simpson was more of a corner, but he certainly had plenty of experience at Auburn at safety. So something to watch. It's funny, you mentioned Buckner. I had Buckner 4, you had Buckner, it sounds like, 6-ish.
Yeah, basically 6, yeah.
I tweet out my list and somebody countered and said, you got Buckner too low. Yeah, I've got Buckner 2.
Okay.
The thing with Buckner is if, again, you're going outright good to great football players to this team, he probably is that high. But I do think there's just a little bit more defensive tackle depth than there is other positions on the team. Now, I don't want to act like, I say that, I don't want to slight Buckner. I mean, he is a 3-down defensive tackle. He's durable as hell. He's a great player and, checks so many important boxes. But if you look at defensive tackle, in a pinch, Dio Dengbo can play there. Tyquan Lewis has slid inside before. I mean, they drafted, remember the kid from Northwestern out of Tamia Adebare? I mean, he was a 4th-round pick. I mean, it's year 2 for him. You'd like to think he could give you something there. I know Raekwon Davis is probably more of a nose tackle.
Plus, you're hoping with Latu, your edge guys are better as well.
So, that's
add
where
it all together.
It's more of just the others around Buckner that I feel better about the others than I do the others behind Blackman, if I'm going to, try to simplify it.
Do any of the names strike you still that are free agents out there? Guys that are probably going to be available well into August?
At safety?
Yeah, I mean, just any of those names out there. I mean, there's some names that have been around the NFL for a while.
Yeah, and
Michael Hyde.
I'm sure you guys talked about Jamal Adams late last week. Adams really wasn't one on my radar. Simmons is the biggest name. Hyde I have liked, certainly. I mean, he was a long-time guy there in Buffalo. So those would probably be the two. And, for me, I've said this quite often, Andy, it's short-term and long-term at safety. Remember, Julian Blackman only re-signed for 1 year.
Oh, I know. We're going to go through this again in 9 months.
And if you read tea leaves, what happened with Julian Blackman's free agency? It went longer than any other Colt. He expressed some frustration with how the safety market looked. He compared it to the running back market from a couple of years ago. For a guy that's had as many injuries as Julian Blackman, I get this. He strikes me as a dude that's going to want that payday. And, as he should. I mean, he was a 3rd-round pick out of Utah. Again, he's battled injuries. Go get the bag, as probably the younger kids would say. So I don't view Blackman as much as he likes being a Colt and, expresses certainly some public desire in wanting to be here. Money is going to talk, and I don't think this is a slam dunk of a re-sign on a 1-year deal that he's necessarily just back here no matter what next year.
Yeah, I do find it interesting. We talked about it at the time that, Ballard let him go out and test the market, right? Go test the market. Kind of like the Giants did with Saquon Barkley, and a bunch of other free agents. Go test the market, and lo and behold, he ends up coming back. Outside of Xavier McKinney, Green Bay just gave him a massive deal. Green Bay paid a safety and a running back who's approaching, his high 20s into his 30s. So we'll see if that works out for Jordan Love. But, I'll say this about safety. I do think one of those veterans, it's a game of cat and mouse because there's probably other teams that are looking there saying the same thing that the Colts are. And you never know, whether it be off-season workouts or it be when, everyone's reporting to camp. Some teams already have that you get to the situation of an injury comes up. And so, if you're Chris Ballard, you maybe don't want to bring someone in right now. You kind of want to see your guys, how it plays out. But the more you wait, those couple quality guys that we just mentioned are going to be off the board. What I will say, about the safety position and the entire defensive backfield. Like we just talked last segment about Brandon Aiyuk, and I don't believe this is a Ballard thing. If the Colts don't ever make a call for Aiyuk, if they show no interest at this point because of the guys that they've signed, I'm not putting that on Ballard. I know that people will. They'll make it, some big deal. This is what Ballard does or doesn't do in the Colts. They don't make these types of moves. There are many levels of criticism. I just don't see Aiyuk as one. But when it comes to probably the safety position, and I'll even throw in the entire secondary, there's no running away for Chris Ballard on the secondary. If it's not good enough, and if you don't make the playoffs, and it's the main reason you don't make the playoffs, these are your guys. These are your guys that you've talked up. You've said multiple times this offseason that they've grown up. Everything that they have projected, KB, and you know this, as a franchise, has been that they like what they have at these positions. If it ends up not being good enough, that's one that fans can put squarely on the general manager. Not Brandon Aiyuk, but this, they absolutely can.
Yeah, it goes back to January. I asked Ballard at the end of the year about Gus Bradley and allowing, the 28th most points in the NFL for 2 years in a row, the why behind that, and he fell on the sword. Didn't give him enough. Young guys in the secondary, et cetera, et cetera. Well, fast forward here 7 months, and this is the group, and it's the same group we talked about in January. I mean, outside of a 5th and a 6th round pick and Micah Abraham and Jalen Simpson, this is the group. So, yes, I would agree on that end. Before yesterday, had you ever heard of the name Josh Berry?
Josh Berry, no. I had not. I apologize to his family. I had not heard of Josh
Mark, should
Berry.
we get Josh Berry on the show?
I think we absolutely should. I was thinking of Joel Berry, who played at North Carolina.
And I remember Eric Berry was wasn't he thought to be maybe a Heisman candidate? They had that song around his time at Tennessee of, the Halle Berry song, and I feel like they sang that about the remix was Eric Berry trying to create Heisman.
I forgot
all
about
Chuck Berry.
Drama.
Chuck Berry and Marvin Berry from Back to the Future.
Josh Berry is a NASCAR driver.
He's a rookie, right?
Leading the Rookie of the Year point standings right now.
Good for him.
And when you watch him turn laps at IMS coming up on Sunday, he will be doing it in a Caitlin Clark painted hood. Now, this is a Caitlin Clark Iowa jersey, specifically shooting a jump shot. That will be the paint scheme for his car here. Again, NASCAR, I guess, has done this. Bubba Wallace did it with Luke Combs. I was unfamiliar with this. Insert your joke here. Kim Kardashian at one point was on a car back in the day.
Do we remember which car
she was on more than a car.
Oh, boy.
So this will be Caitlin Clark, again, partnering via Panini here. Let's think of the card company. So that's, I think, where this stems from Iowa jersey. Again, when I first saw the headline, I'm like, again, this is country music act, and Indy is ready for the encore and pulls out the Caitlin Clark Fever jersey, and the crowd erupts. Like, I assumed this would be her in a Fever paint scheme, but no, this is going to be Iowa. Now, Caitlin Clark will not be at IMS this weekend. Her duties will be in Phoenix with the WNBA All-Star Game.
Okay, so Kim Kardashian was on the number 28 Mike Bliss car back in 2010. That's great memory for you. I mean, that's only 15 years old. You remember
Core
that.
memory for Kevin Bowen, apparently.
Big memory. When I was a sophomore in college, I said, let's huddle around and watch the Bliss car turn some laps.
Good. She had a new fragrance that was coming out, and so there you go.
Now you asked me this earlier in the week, and I think it's a fair question. Doug Bull's going to join the show later in the week. You said this to me. I think we were actually walking back from the Caitlin Clark interview, ironically enough, at Gamebridge Fieldhouse, and you started to look up at the street signs, which, it's a popular thing in Indy to change those to, whatever sporting event is in town, and they start to go up with some of the NASCAR drivers. You looked at me and said, man, where is the marketing? Like, why have we not talked about the Brickyard 400?
Like at all. I mean, you haven't heard anything about it.
When you compare it to the Indy 500.
Oh, sure. And I'm not even, comparing it to the 500 because I know they're not the same, but
they're not in stratospheres.
I mean, not in the same stratosphere, so it'd be silly to even compare them. But yeah, I mean, the Brickyard is this weekend, and there just seems like, precious little, I don't want to say conversation or media or marketing or just, there's just not much. There's not much about it. So one has 300 and some thousand, and one's gonna have 75,000.
Well, what was it last fall. Was it
75
like an
seems
IU
high.
basketball game or an IU football game that we're like, this is coming to Indy, and there's been no
It was the football game against
the football
Louisville.
game. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
like, there's been no signage. Or no one knew it was in town.
Now, to be Brickyard, I mean, think about a standalone weekend. This is a dream for them.
It's-
I mean, there's
yeah.
no fever game. Colts training camp's still a week away.
Great weather. It's going to be like 80 degrees and sunny out,
IU
KB.
football, you're going to run into some other stuff, just, whatever, Colts and et cetera, and, insert your joke about IU football here. I think what issues for the Brickyard, and, this could be a much longer discussion that's probably made for Jake Query more than me, but they went on the road course for a couple years. I think that took some of the, glitz and the glamour. They've struggled finding a date on the schedule. It's like, wait,
Right.
it's July 2. Now, the weather looks great for this
Yeah.
weekend, temperature-wise.
I think that's key.
It's like, wait, we're into September for a little bit, and now you bump up to the NFL, and then the July dates have fluctuated a little bit. So, yeah, it just has never – and, Mark, I mean, I can probably speak for you. We've struggled to book any and all drivers, really.
Uh-huh.
And, we might have had a few issues around the 500 this year. We still had plenty of drivers on around the Indy 500. That plays into it a little bit more. I don't know the every week cadence, if that is something along those lines, but I mean, I would think the Kyle Larson storyline is something of note here for this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know if NASCAR's I'm trying to rate its popularity. I feel like it's not very popular. Right? And I understand the IndyCar isn't right now. I think their new TV deal will help them immensely, but the Indianapolis 500 is. I mean, obviously, we know the 500 is different than the other races that are out there. I mean, they go to Detroit the weekend after the 500. Those two are not in the same stratosphere. Yeah, I'm not trying to denounce NASCAR. I'm not trying to get into this conversation where it's like NASCAR had its chance, 15 years ago to capitalize, and they didn't. Me and Mark were talking during the break, because it was on one of the commercials. Mark's like, if you want to take your family out to the track, you can spread out. You can get a little room out the track this weekend if you go out.
Certainly.
Go out
and again,
to the Brickyard.
temperature looks. Can you imagine
It
if it
looks
would have
awesome.
been last Sunday or Monday with how steamy it was those
my
2
God.
days? And I think it's smart to get back on the oval. Is maybe the racing at its peak on the oval? No, but there's an element of like, whatever. Augusta National builds a new golf course in the next few years, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna put the Masters on that course.
Right.
It's like, wait, what? Like you lose all the history and all the fame, and I do think that is a good thing for NASCAR. So Doug Bull's going to join us here later in the week.
Just one more before we get to a check down. We'll get Will Haskett. Did you see Stingray Robb talked yesterday after his wreck? And he's like, I should have been, watching it back. He's like, I should have been more injured. I should have been injured. I should have been more injured than I was, basically, is what he had to
went
say.
airborne on the final lap.
It's
For those that missed
unbelievable.
it, Alexander Rossi running out of fuel. Stingray Robb hits him from behind, and I believe he had the quote of, at one point, I was eye level with the catch fence. I mean, you want to talk about a scary moment.
I just
when
can't
you see
imagine.
these crashes of, again, car into fence. I don't need to remind anybody of some of those. So, yes, great. Unbelievable. As Alexander Rossi, I thought, laid out in a tweet, it was all of just, let's put blame to the side. The fact that we all pretty much walked away from that, did walk away from it. Stingray, I think, had to go to the hospital briefly. It's just unbelievable.
And the reason I bring it up is, Stingray's a guy that came on all the shows for 2 weeks.
He was live with us at Carb Day.
He was live with us at Carb Day. So, obviously.
Hell, he's leading a bunch of laps during the 500.
So, a guy that's nice enough to go on all the shows with us knuckleheads leading up to the race, I kind of watch him and hope he does well. And he had a nice day on the 500, but that's scary, man. That's one thing that I'll pass on. There's still a huge part of me that will never understand how these guys do what they do.
Toronto for IndyCar coming up here on Sunday. All right, let's hit a morning check down before we get to Will Haskett.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by Butler Bulldogs Basketball. Season tickets are on sale now. Order by August 1st for your shot at the best seats in Hinkle Fieldhouse. Visit butlersports.com/buy tickets.
All right, just like the 7 o'clock hour, let's lead off morning check down with the Pacers over the Suns yesterday in Summer League. The Pacers now 1-2 in the Vegas Summer League. Got their first win come from behind yesterday. We talked about Jarris Walker, of course, had the 19 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists in the wins. The other one that we talked about, KB, to start the show, what's there not to like about Johnny Furphy? I still don't understand how all those teams passed him in the first round, had basically the game icing shot, the 3 there. Didn't even bring it down. Did you like that? A little Larry Birdish?
Well, if he brought it down,
high.
it would have been a shot clock violation.
Fair
He had
enough.
to get it up, and he did.
Yeah, and he did. 18 points, 8 rebounds in the win yesterday for Furphy. Gennaro Pargo, head coach there for the Summer League on Furphy's Play.
Johnny's been solid. You got to know what you're getting out of him at a very young age. A guy that can shoot the ball. And defensively, just the way he's moving his feet, talking, and competing on all levels.
Again, I would still like to see Jarvis Walker play tomorrow, and whenever they have their final game, I still think it's a good message to send to him of like, yes, we like what you're doing offensively, but give us more defense. Like, keep on drilling that into him, because I think, honestly, it's probably more of just a mindset thing than anything. 4:30 tomorrow for the Pacers in the Summer League. All right, last night in the All-Star game, it was the AL beating the NL 5-3. You had some good fireworks early. Paul Skeens pitched in that first inning. He got to Aaron Judge. 2 ground outs and a fly ball. Did allow a walk to Juan Soto. He made Juan Soto look pretty silly on a couple of those swings and misses there. So Skeens pitched that opening inning. Shohei Ohtani hits a 3-run homer in the second. 5-3 the final there. No runs in the last 4 innings. So if you went to bed, smart.
Well, where are you going to go?
Because the Reds blew the game for the National League.
They ruined it for the National League. People would really care if they did it for home field advantage now. Everyone would be pissed off. Market Hunter Green. Poor Hunter Green on a team 3 games below 500. And that's why it's good that they did away.
Why is this crappy team's pitcher determining who gets home field in the World Series?
It's so good that they did away with that. Fever tonight in Dallas.
I think they need to bring it back. Who cares about the game?
Get rid of the jerseys, please.
Yeah.
Just go back to the regular jerseys.
I did. One thing I do eat up is the umpire view. I love a good umpire view.
Yeah.
Because that's not a job that I would ever want in my life.
Seeing that pitch coming there at 90 whatever.
Well, it's not only that. Knowing what's a strike and what's a ball. I mean, some of them are easy, some of them not so easy. Fever in Dallas tonight, the first game, last game before essentially about a month off. 7:30 tonight on ESPN. Dallas, not very good. What was the stat you gave earlier? They started out 3-2, and then they went 2-17 to Dallas?
Yes,
Is
they
that
are
it?
the worst team in the WNBA.
Man.
5 wins, I think 5-19 on the year.
Gotta win tonight. Fever favored.
Take care of business, which, again, that was a label we threw out last Wednesday at home, and they did not do that against the Mystics.
About 4.5 is your spread there between the Fever and Dallas tonight.
You'll get a little lunchtime Tyrese Halliburton action if you'd like. USA-Serbia, on paper, that's a juicy matchup. That's Nikola Jokic. I don't think Bogdanovic has played for Serbia early on, and they played yesterday. So, who knows? I mean, Jokic could be resting. These two teams are in the same group, by the way, in the Olympics. So, you might, let's keep our cards closer to the vest here because it's going to matter a whole lot more in a few weeks. Serbia actually lost to Australia yesterday in an exhibition game. So for Team USA, that will be their final tune-up in Abu Dhabi. They'll play a couple exhibition games in London before the Olympics, of course, get underway in Paris.
All right, we'll take a break. Coming up on the other side, we know Tiger Woods is going to win the Open Championship. Who's going to finish second? Our golf expert, Will Haskett, he joins us next on this Wednesday. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Boy, I can't wait. We'll be at the back nine tomorrow. And one of the things I love about the back nine, got a couple TV screens there at the end of the range. And at this point, we will be full consumption here. Well, maybe a drink or two. But full British Open consumption as well. And to talk more about that, our next guest from PGA Tour Radio, you hear him with us pretty much every major championship. He is Will Haskett. Will, good morning.
So Bloody Marys at 7 a.m. while hitting golf balls tomorrow? Is that what I heard?
Bloody Marys, you want to throw a little rum shot in your coffee? By all means, whatever gets it done. Your favorite British Open memory is what?
Wow, that's a good one. I mean, honestly, I love morning golf. So I guess I'll go broadly. I just like being able to wake up or have a reason to wake up early and turn on sports. So having never actually attended the event, still like on the list of things to sort of check off. It's been such a fun sort of spectator experience. But I mean, I think St. Andrews in the Rota has always given us so many incredible memories, whether it was the Rory Cam Smith duel from a couple of years ago or things of that nature. But I mean, to put me on the spot there's been so many really good ones. I was in college and we were going on a cruise with my family, and I was a huge David Duval fan. So his win while watching it in the back of the car that was taking us to the boat in New York City is probably my lasting sort of memory, because that was the culmination of my guy finally getting a major. But I just love being able to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and watch some high-level golf.
Well, I could not agree more on that. And let me throw two at you. You would assume I'd go Tiger. Sure, Tiger crying in Stevie's arms after his dad had passed, and that win is probably up there. But I'll go Tom Watson almost getting it done, and that heartbreak there. What was that? I don't know. Probably at this point 15 years ago or so. And then Van de Velde in 99 choking. That to me,
that's what I was gonna say.
Those are the two.
Yeah, they're all like remember when stuff, right? Like, sure, I remember where I was when all of those things were happening, and not to bore the listeners with all of the various moments of my life. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, and then you've got the Todd Hamilton, Ben Curtis stories too. I mean, those were just kind of incredible. Who are these guys? And it sort of added to the lore of anybody with the right draw and the right mindset can win an Open championship. I'm not really sure that exists today, but yeah, it's in at least our lifetimes, there's been some really incredible ones. And again, like, they happen at such a different sort of time. You don't get that prime time finish here in the United States. So where you are consuming or how you are consuming those moments is very different than most other golf tournaments when it falls later in the day.
Will Haskett with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline on this Wednesday. All right, Will, so I want to jump into, who you think can win. I know there's many different storylines for this weekend at Royal Troon, but we got to do this. And KB, I know you were going to ask about this probably later on. What did you make of the Colin Montgomery comments about Tiger Woods?
Whoa, this is not me asking about Tiger.
Maybe Woods should. Well, this is, you got to lead with the best stuff. Maybe Woods should retire. For people that don't know, that's what Monty said. And then yesterday, Tiger clapped back in one of the great shutdowns of all time and says, well, I'm a past champion, so I got until I'm 60 years old. I'm good, big boy. Monty, you haven't won this event, so you just sit over there in the corner. What did you make of that back and forth over the last couple days?
Yeah, I'll preface this with two things. Number one, I have not read or heard the entire interview, and Monty yesterday came out and said, listen, you guys are taking one quote out of something and turning it and spinning it out of context. So I don't know how true that is. I know what the quote was, and it certainly was great fodder, and over there the tabloids will run with it. And Monty is a fantastic analyst for the BBC and Sky and all those outlets over there. So he's kind of gotten into this next phase of his career where he's having to say things that are a little bit more, I guess, flamboyant in nature to obviously, think of him as the Brandel Chambly of broadcasting, only over there in terms of what Monty has done. I thought Tiger handled it perfectly. I mean, I don't think that they're very good friends or, buddies through the years. There's obviously been a lot of competition through Ryder Cups through past years. And I thought Tiger did a pretty good job generally being a guy who I don't think gives us a whole lot of personality or fun sort of one-liners like that. I thought it was the perfect follow-up to it. But, I mean, let's also be a little bit honest here. Tiger has earned the right to play as long as he wants to, whenever he wants to. But, and I know KB is going to hate this one, like, he hasn't looked like a guy that should be playing in majors for the last couple of years. So there's truth to both. Like, he is the greatest of all time. He will drive ratings no matter when he's playing. We all want Tiger to continue playing because he makes the sport more attractive, I guess, even when he's, playing poorly. But Monty's not wrong. Like, if your body was completely broken and you're a guy who has had that incredible level of success before, like, why bother continue to running it out there each and every time knowing that you don't have it? I know Tiger says, I'm showing up here because I want to win. And it's really incredible that he can maintain that mindset because, guys, he can't win.
Will Haskett with us. Okay, as a follow-up with that, this is going all the way back to when Tiger was dealing with even other health issues back in, 2017 and 2018. And then I saw it again yesterday, Will, where people have said, everyone believes that the Masters is the best chance Tiger has of winning, of course, winning a major championship, when it's actually this style of golf in the Open Championship. Do you agree with that analysis? And if so, why?
I think this is the most wide open in terms of all of the things that can happen. Luck of the draw, 1 2-hour window of time where the wind blows can wipe out half the field if you get the wrong tee time, which I think either Scotty Scheffler or somebody mentioned in a press conference this week. Like, what's the key to winning? Getting a good tee time, was one of those things. But to the heart of the question, I just look at it from a probability standpoint. The reason why the Masters, in my opinion, is the easier one to win is, number one, guys who win there have experience on that golf course, and no one is more experienced than veterans like Tiger, or look at the run that Fred Couples had, or everybody through the years. And number two, the field is so small. The number of guys that can actually win that golf tournament is significantly less than this one. There will be 6 or 7 names on the top 2 pages of the leaderboard when we wake up tomorrow morning that everybody's going to scratch their head and be like, who's this guy? And it's like, well, he's a world-class golfer who's playing really good right now. And you have almost 160 guys in the field, which you can at the Open Championship because it's so long, the days are so long in Scotland right now, and you can squeeze in all of this golf. It just increases the probability that anybody can win. So, yes, does the style of play lend itself to a Ben Curtis type or a Todd Hamilton type or an injured Tiger Woods type to be able to win? I guess, but there's just more bodies that you have to come across to be able to win. So it's like a guy who's in, is 4 shots off of the lead in a golf tournament, but he happens to be like tied for 26. Like, yeah, you're only 4 shots back, but you have to deal with all of the traffic that's between you and the guy. So let's go an IndyCar analogy. You're 5 seconds behind the leader, but you're in 19th place and it's stacked up. You have to pass all those cars that are in front of you. There are less cars to pass in the Masters than there are cars to pass at the Open Championship if you want to get to the top. So, yes, style of play, but the field itself, I think, negates that sort of openness to being able to win.
Yeah, I mean, of all the 4, they have had probably the most Cinderella-ish, the most old-ish, if you want to describe it, winners compared to some of the other majors. We'll see if that happens here. Coming up on Sunday, Will Haskett, PJ Tour Radio, with us on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Well, it's kind of wild to me. We've now gone, I think it's 7 straight majors, 6 straight majors with a U.S. champion, all different. Is that a storyline like we should put more stock in? I believe I saw the stat earlier this week. 82 was the last time Americans swept all 4 majors. Is that a storyline that maybe we should talk more about?
I think it's a bit of a storyline. When you look at it, though, over the last several years, it's been American-dominated. We just happen to always have one non-American win one of the 4 to sort of keep that streak going of not having an American sweep since 1982. And then right now you have, the most dominant force in the game is Scotty. But, you're a Rory McIlroy 2.5-footer away from this not being a story at the U.S. Open last month. So it's the fine margins. I think if it were to happen, it's a really cool footnote to how it does. But then you've got a number of favorites this week. If you're looking just at the top of the betting board right now, it kind of alternates, right? It's American Irishman, American Swede, American Englishman, Spaniard. I mean, so I think it's more of a coincidence that we've arrived at this particular major with the opportunity to complete the American Slam, if you will, this year, whereas in past years, John Rahm won a Masters and we didn't even have to worry about talking about it. But no, Americans are great at the top of the sport right now. It's a reason why it's so befuddling that we can't win Ryder Cups on foreign soil, because American golf is deeper than the rest of the world. It still is, even though it's become a very international game. We have a really, really, really deep bench of players, and many of them have risen to the moment over the last couple of years.
Will, let me throw 5 American names at you, and you tell me who finishes the best out of this 5-man group. Dustin Johnson, Justin Thomas, John Daly, Phil Mickelson, Eldrick Woods.
Wow. Justin Thomas. I think that's he's the only one that's playing at a level of golf that would make me even think that he has a chance. I don't think he's going to win. But of the rest of the guys, like DJ appears to be very happy fishing on top of his giant pile of money, and the rest of them have obviously aged out of being competitive.
That's unbelievable. I like Dustin Johnson too. I mean, he's one of the guys that have lost it on his pile of money. Like I said, that Will Haskett with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. What do you think? The winner, what do you think the final score? Last year, it was 13 under. Cam Smith won 2 years ago at 20 under. What do you think that target is going to be? And again, I ask that knowing that who the hell knows what's going to happen with the weather over the next 4.5 days.
Yeah, and remember the last time we played at Royal Troon, Henrik Stenson was 20 under, Phil Mickelson was 17 under, and third place was 6 under. So we had 2 guys that ran away from the field and had one of the most epic back and forths in a major. I mean, to go back to the original question of, what do I remember most recently? I mean, watching those 2 throw haymakers at each other when it was really hard was really special. I honestly think we're going to get something kind of similar to that. I think we'll have a couple of guys that play really well and maybe separate themselves a little bit. So I think someone will certainly get to double digits this week. The weather forecast looks very Scottish, but I wouldn't say extremely brutal, and it actually looks pretty balanced in terms of, yes, it's going to be blowing, yes, it's going to be rainy, yes, it's going to be a little bit cool, but it's going to kind of be like that for everybody, and it's not going to wipe out, I would say, a particular wave of the tournament this week. So I'll split the difference between Stenson going absolutely nuts in this place 8 years ago and kind of the reality of it, and I'll say someone gets to 13 under par.
Will, we'll end with this, and part of it is venting. I guess I'll end with a question, but I said this to Andy earlier. When the British Open arrives now on the schedule, it's the last major of the year. It wasn't always like that. The PGA Championship moving to May has now led to that, and I just hate it, to be frank, that we now will go 9 months without a major, and I get it was only 1 month different, but now with the LIV PGA Tour split, we just don't get these guys together again. And,
Correct.
President's Cup year doesn't have the same sort of feel to it as maybe a Ryder Cup year as well. So that's me venting a little bit that I hate it. But I guess the question I would ask is, where are we at right now for our audience that hasn't followed the story or doesn't really care too much? Where are we at PGA Tour and LIV, and what is next?
I mean, I think everybody thinks they're making progress. We're hearing the same lines here and there. I mean, Tiger sort of alluded to it earlier this week when he was addressing why he didn't take the Ryder Cup captaincy because of all of the work that he's doing. And he says that he's on, conference calls on a daily basis, many of them dealing with the PIF. I think we're getting pretty close. I think we will probably have something in terms of an agreement fully reached by the end of the year. In terms of how that applies and how guys come back together, it's not going to be a 2025 fix. It's probably at least a year down the road from that. And then in terms of the schedule, the PGA Tour shifted its schedule this year, much of it in reaction to the players and their sort of demands as it relates to LIV and the money. They've always wanted to kind of get out of the way of football. And even though the fall schedule was announced, and that's going to have different drama for the golf sycophants out there like me, who are going to watch this fall for guys that are playing for their livelihoods, which I think is far more compelling now than watching Uber millionaires play for more Ubers of millions of dollars. We've got the playoffs, and then it's kind of the end of the year for most of the big name players. And what I'll be really curious to see, and whenever the agreement is sort of hashed out, is do they do something in the fall, opposite of the events where guys are playing for their livelihood, where they try and bring the big names together 2 or 3 times. Again, it's going to be against football, but do you bring these guys all together for major cash grab sort of tournaments, a la what LIV sort of feels like? Is that the agreement that we get to, and then we get to see these guys play each other, not just in a United Tour January through August, but then in a couple of big type of events through the fall season where you can carry the momentum of a major season into a competition. I think that's the likely agreement here. But again, you've got a lot of guys with a ton of money who don't want to play a ton of golf now. And so how they come back together is a huge, huge sticking point right now in these negotiations.
Again, you hear his work, PJ Tour Radio, and you hear him on these airwaves quite often around major championship time. He is Will Haskett. Will, thank you, sir.
Bye, guys.
That's Will Haskett, Payless Liquors Hotline. I could be politically correct and say, what Will said. I should hear the full Colin Montgomery clip. I think Monty's an idiot.
I agree with you, by the way. Yeah.
First off, he's acting like Tiger is shooting 90 out there. Tiger made the cut at the Masters. Tiger, missed the cut by just a couple of shots at the U.S. Open and the PGA Championship. I threw Justin Thomas's name into that question earlier.
Well, Thomas hasn't been very good, for 2 years
now,
You want
to hear Justin Thomas's 2-year major run here, Andy?
Go ahead, because I know it's been bad.
Miscut, 65th, miscut, tied for 8th at Valhalla.
Right.
His
course.
Home venue. And then miscut at the U.S. Open. So, again, let's not act like Tiger is the 80-year-old former Masters champ that shows up to Augusta and shoots 88, 87 and walks off the golf course.
Well,
he's not Sandy Lyle walking around.
And I'm thinking more like Tommy Aaron or Charles Coody from back in the day. It's like, wait, these guys need to stop playing in the Masters. That to me, it's, and again, Tiger would hate this comment, but it's not just either you win or you have the ability to win or you don't show up. There's 150 some guys in the field. Tiger's not finishing 156th. I think he's earned the right to try and tee it up, see if his body is improving, and see what happens. Monty's an idiot.
I think it's all based in there's so many people that want to see him do well. I think that bothers some people, and I think Monty probably fits the mold of one of those guys it bothers. So
respectfully, he can kiss my ass.
There you go. I'm with you. I've never been much of a Colin Montgomery fan as well. Didn't they call him Mrs. Doubtfire back in the day, 20 years ago, whatever it was?
You do the side-by-sides. It's hard to argue.
Not that bad. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll wrap up hour number 2 coming up next.
The pictures hit social media yesterday. We're always kind of curious during the summer break for NFL teams when and where will the player-run minicamp occur. And it looks like for the Colts that occurred out Westlake, California. Michael Pittman Jr., of course, ties to that area. And he mentioned that he thought he'd be the one hosting this year after they were in Miami last year. So among those in the picks, Andy, Anthony Richardson, Sam Ehlinger. Don't know if Joe Flacco was there. I know Flacco was playing in that American Century golf tournament in Reno with Dwight Freeney and company over the weekend. But you had your usual suspects at the skill positions: Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman Jr., Alec Pierce, A.D. Mitchell, Josh Downs, et cetera, et cetera. And it's probably worth pointing out, Richardson, Pittman, Pierce all looked to be participating, and they, of course, did not end the spring participating with their respective injuries. So good signs there, as report day is 1 week from today.
All right, if you're a player, would you rather go to Miami or California? I'm guessing they would all rather go to Miami, but I don't know.
Part of California we talking? San Diego? Because I might be in on San Diego.
Yeah, it depends, what you want to check off the box, maybe off the field. If
Yeah.
you want a little nightlife,
That's what I was
would
thinking.
say South Beach. If you want a little bask in the glory, and I don't know, I guess you could probably light one or two up anywhere, but, maybe California would be better.
Yeah, you could. Now,
on that
the
end.
second thing we haven't talked about this before we go to break, you mentioned Flacco playing golf out at the American Century Championship in Lake Tahoe. I've been to that event once.
Really?
It's unbelievable. Yeah, I got to go.
Good for you.
A company I used to work for, it's out of Kansas City. American Century is there, so all the bigwigs happen to know each other. Now, I know a couple media members that were out there. I need to reach out to them. Do you see Jerry Rice get into it with you reporters?
He got lippy. Very lippy.
I
I actually have interviewed Jerry Rice at the Hall of Fame induction a few years back. He was super nice to me.
Yeah, but KB, that event is the last place that you would get into it with anybody.
I know, it seems so laid back.
It's laid back. It's family. It's friends. It's a good time. It's a pro-am. And when I went out there, a bunch of dumb questions can get asked. I mean, Jerry Rice, he was asked about, do you think the Chiefs wide receiver group is good enough to win the third straight Super Bowl? And he went nuts over that. That's just so odd to me. Again, you're in paradise. It is, and everyone is
Just throw a
giving
layup,
you free stuff.
Throw a layup and move on.
I mean, come on. Give an answer and move on. So, good stuff there. All right, on the other end, back to Summer League. What did we see with Johnny Furphy? The importance of maybe even the next game with Jarris Walker. We'll dive into that 9 o'clock hour coming up here on The Fan.
Some thoughts on the Pacers Summer League as they got their first win out in Vegas coming up in a few. Should the Colts pursue Brandon Aiyuk? We'll hit on that as well. At 9:30, a former Olympian and Indy native, that would be Sam Peszek, going to join the show. She is the color commentator alongside Terry Gannon for the Olympics here for the Gymnastics coming up in a couple of weeks. I guess we're probably less than 2 weeks away from the start of that. She did great work when I was watching her at the U.S. team trials a few weeks ago. You know, a question to throw Sam's way, because certainly our expertise is beyond lacking when it comes to this.
You think?
Simone Biles is back, and that is arguably the biggest Olympic storyline, I think, heading into Paris. Remember, she had the twisties back in Tokyo, like literally got up there and has mentioned like she would literally flip into the air and have no idea what she was about to do.
Basically the yips for gymnasts.
And I would love to hear it from someone like Sam Peszek, what exactly that is, if she's ever had it, what that feels like. Because, you know, again, you say the yips. Is this, you know, someone having the shanks in golf? Is this Chuck Knobloch fielding it? Is this Rick Ankiel trying to pitch? Like, you know, what is this Pascal Siakam shooting free throws in the playoffs? Like, what is this? And what does that feeling what is that like?
And how do you get it back?
I know.
Now she's the best in the world again. Like, how does that happen?
So we'll chat with Sam about that, among other topics, coming up here at 9:30.
Yeah, we'll do a pop quiz later. But, Scotty, if you're listening before the pop quiz, we need a list of, don't we need a list of baseball players that had the yips besides Rick Ankiel? It was probably what? I mean, at least 10 people he could think of. You ever had the yips in golf before?
Sure, certainly.
Where for like 6 months you lost it?
Yeah, it is. It's a scary thought, to say the least. And I'm not jumping in the air and thinking I might land on my neck.
I was about to say. So the biggest storyline for Pacers Summer League. What do you think? We've talked, obviously, I would say, 90% Jarris Walker and 10% Johnny Furphy. You think that's fair?
Yeah.
Maybe even 95% Jarris Walker. Is that the biggest story? What is the biggest story? And I know there's still two games left, and I would imagine at least Johnny Furphy, and I would have Jarris Walker out there for at least one more game.
Yeah, I mean, the Pacers, by keeping Walker longer than Shepard, they have sent a message, and they should be sending a message. I frankly think Jarris Walker should continue to play because, you know, I don't care about these other guys on the Summer League roster.
I really don't.
Sorry to their families, but I just don't. So, you know, Jarris Walker, I think, needs to be out there. I think it's important to just send a wake-up call to him, and I think you continue to do that. You've mentioned the 90-10 Walker over Furphy, and I guess to sum up the Walker thing, continue to really like what he brings offensively. Like I continue to be very impressed by it.
He's got better,
I mean,
sure.
The shooting continues to be at a high level. I think he passes the ball pretty well. You know, he's never going to be asked to, I think, be the number 1 or 2 option, but he is certainly serviceable on the offensive end. Defensively, I still have some questions. But on the Furphy point, I really like what I've seen.
I agree, man.
And
I totally
don't
agree.
want to, get hyperbolic and think all of a sudden Furphy should be challenging for rookie minutes or anything like that. But, at Kansas, he was not put into a ton of these pressure-packed situations. And, it's Summer League, whoop-de-doo. But yesterday, shot clock winding down. Pacers looked like they could blow another one out in Vegas, and boom, Furphy hits, a game-clinching 3 with 1 to go on the clock. I think he's shown a little bit more outside of just standstill shooter that at 19 years old, I tend to think, okay, that's a little bit of moldable clay. Can you work with that? Can you round out his game a little bit more? And, I get why the Pacers viewed him as highly as they did. Rick Carlisle told us, 14th on the draft board. I can see some of that. So I'll probably exit Summer League thinking to myself, Walker, okay, don't think he's done anything to really challenge the coaching staff's thinking on their rotation. We'll see if that changes come training camp in the season. Furphy, I don't think necessarily he's challenged the coaching staff at thinking he can give you minutes right away, but I think he's sent some sort of message to the organization of like, I've got some tools, guys, and now it's up to you to deem how the development is best utilized. And that's, I think, a major question. How often do you play him in Noblesville? How much is he a G leaguer? Do you make a trade at the deadline to try to open up minutes for him? I think in general, that will be a question that's probably not super pressing in 2024, maybe not 2025, but will be at some point.
I thought going into the Summer League, I said this right after the draft, that I thought the Pacers felt like, and it was even more set in stone or concrete, if you will, when we had Rick Carlisle on last Monday, and that is, KB, I think they got an absolute steal with Johnny Furphy in the third round. And we knew that because they moved up a spot or whatever it was. I mean, but Carlisle telling us that they had him 14th on their big board, and then for him to fall all the way to the mid-30s at 35, I mean, that is a substantial drop. And you usually don't see that. And, you know, with this guy, watching him in Summer League, I just think the Pacers are being quiet about it, but I think the Pacers feel like they have a guy that in a couple years is going to fit exactly what they need and exactly what they want. And, you know, I mean, come on. You know, guys are on contracts, and at some point guys are going to be traded. Guys run off contracts and everything else. You got to kind of have the next group that's ready to go. And for a guy like Johnny Furphy, it's perfect. It's not you have to play him immediately. He's a second-round pick. You got to have some cheap guys on your team when you're paying guys max-level deals and Obi Toppin, and you want to pay, you know, Andrew Nembhard, and you want to pay more on TJ McConnell. I think there is a quiet confidence about Johnny Furphy. I really do, and I think he has shown that. I thought he would be a little bit more of a liability on defense. I don't feel like he's been this huge liability on defense. I think people, you know, because he's a small, slender guy that no one knew a lot of. You know, I think that fits into a little bit, but I mean, I thought he was out playing guys. I know it's not all about points, but, you know, a guy like Ryan Dunn out of Virginia, he had 4 points against the Pacers last night, and that's a guy, I mean, Seth Greenberg yesterday just on and on about Ryan Dunn, and that guy can't score at any close to an NBA level. I know he's a defender, but I think there is a quiet confidence here with Johnny Furphy. And then, you know, Jarris Walker, I don't know if he is going to be a guy that we waste a lot of time on, or we spend, I should say, a lot of time on, and eventually it clicks, or if he's a guy that we're going to waste and spend a lot of time on, and eventually it's just he's not going to fit what the Pacers are kind of looking for. And if so, you know, that is going to be, if Jarris Walker ends up being a guy, and I don't know how you view this, actually. I'm not sure we've talked about it this way. You know, if Walker ends up not blossoming, or Walker ends up just not being a kind of a guy that they're looking for in their system, what does that mean for a top 10 lottery pick? You having a pick in that draft, and if it ends up being a miss, what does that say, right? Because the Pacers have had not a lot of misses, and you know, a lot of the moves they made, the trades they made, how they brought guys along, some of even the smaller acquisitions that they've made, they've done a lot of good things to go get TJ McConnell and Obi Toppin, and the Halliburton trade was so huge, and we know with Pascal Siakam and everything else, I don't know, and then they brought other guys along. Guys have got a lot better under especially the last couple years of Rick Carlisle. I don't know if fans will kind of put it on the organization and say, hey, you had a chance here to get a top 10 guy that we could bring along and blossom, and he didn't do it. I don't know what to do. I guess I just don't know what to do with Jarris Walker after the Summer League here, especially if he doesn't play anymore.
At least for me, I still think we're a ways away from that conversation needing to be had, just because it is still, I mean, again, he hasn't started year 2. This is a team that, you know, obviously is much deeper than most top 10 teams. So I'm probably not ready for it, honestly, and I know it's a bit of a cop-out. It would be disappointing, I guess, if you ever got there. That's the obvious answer, especially because finances are starting to get tighter, and you don't draft often in the top 10. It's important to hit on those picks, et cetera, et cetera. But I like watching Walker in Summer League. I mean, have you ever heard me say he's a bust? No. Like, I mean, that.
Oh, not at all.
Right. Like, okay, I would like for him to be better defensively. That's my general thought. I think offensively, he can bring you something, and at some point, he probably will and should crack the rotation. But right now, I understand why he has to earn those minutes. I do think a couple other just random Summer League notes before we move on to the Colts. Enrique Freeman, I continue to like. I don't know, again, how it's going to look, and maybe he's Alize Johnson and Terry Taylor 2.0, and, you know, who really cares, but I do like that. And Dakota Mathias continues to play
He's knocked down shots, man.
Really well for this team. So, you know, 28, 29-year-old G Leaguers. What did Dakota Mathias tell us? Didn't he tell us he was living in Westfield, Mark?
Yeah, we had him on.
Yeah, I think so.
I think he I have this right. I could be totally up. I think he married the daughter of one of the Purdue assistant coaches.
Okay. I'm glad you know that. I had no idea. Okay. Well, good for him.
Which, I always thought to
Yeah,
myself,
good for
boy,
him.
if you're an assistant coach, you obviously think pretty highly of the player. If, you give your
Make it better.
daughter's blessing for
I
that.
know.
So I'm trying to think who it was. His name is escaping me right now. I can picture him. But, yeah, Dakota Mathias, he could be playing, very close to his home if he is if he's a Noblesville Mad Anner, or however that's going to work with Fort Wayne.
Can
being
I
the
ask
name.
you 2 questions? You ready for these? This is sports radio fodder here.
Yeah.
Okay, you ready for this? Who do you think has more of an impact this year? Is it still Jarris Walker over Johnny Furphy?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Furphy ain't playing.
I'm just making sure.
No.
I'm totally with you. Furphy just needs to get a little bit bigger. I mean, that's all. He just needs to put on some weight. Would you rather have Jarris Walker or Trace Jackson Davis on your team for this year?
Oh, I'd rather have Jarris Walker. Yeah, because of the potential there to be a wing defender.
Now, I'm looking at that draft, and that's, that draft, Victor Wembanyama a couple years ago goes, and then, Brandon Miller. For some reason, Brandon Miller, by the way, is still playing. Why is Brandon Miller in the summer league this year? Isn't he established enough?
Summer league, it's always kind of odd how teams treat it.
I'm not really sure what we're doing, but
Matherin played in it as All-NBA rookie.
Well, fair enough. Right below Jarris Walker at number 9, Taylor Hendricks. And the only reason I bring him up, Taylor Hendricks, guys right around Jarris Walker. Hendricks is a player for the Utah Jazz. He's a power forward. He's averaging 7 a game. Cason Wallace, if you remember him, he's on Oklahoma City. More of a defensive player. He's averaging about 7 points a game as well. I bring all that up just because that draft is very hit or miss, right? Like Grady Dick has come in. I think he's a good NBA player. But, a couple spots below Jarris Walker, Jalen Hood-Schifino. Schifino has done nothing right now
So he had
in
back
the NBA.
surgery.
Oh, did he? Yeah. He hasn't done much. Then you go all the way down, like Noah Clowney at 21. Clowney's become a really nice player. Right below him, Dariq Whitehead out of Duke hasn't done a whole lot, obviously, for the Nets. So that draft a couple years ago is a difficult one, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's some good players, but, it's littered with guys who right now aren't doing a damn thing in the NBA.
Brandon Aiyuk, come week 1 of the NFL season, is he a 49er?
Yes, I'm going to say he is. What do you think it would take to pry him out? Is it a first rounder? Is the value less with the picks because I don't know. What is it? Because you're going to have to pay him a lot of money?
Yeah, I think it's some package that equals first-round value. Obviously, you would have to give him a new contract on top of that. He averaged, nearly 18 yards per catch last season? That's a crazy high number. Now, there might be some that would say, okay, how much does he benefit from Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey around him?
Great offensive line. They can run the football. His numbers would be a little bit more if he had a quarterback that could go down the field better and they didn't run they can just run the football with Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, so, part of me is like, well, he would get more looks elsewhere, but also he wouldn't have the type of attention that's going elsewhere like it does happen in San Francisco for him. So I tend to think this is just a lot of player agent-driven smoke, and as many national people pointed out yesterday, the leverage is just not immense with Brandon Aiyuk. Not to say that Jonathan Taylor had a ton of leverage last year, but I think in a way, which is weird to say about a running back versus a wideout, Aiyuk has less. Again, you've got a 5th-year team option, and you've got a franchise tag if they would like to place that on him as well. So Aiyuk just doesn't have a lot. Sitting out? What? He's going to give up all that money?
Yeah, players that do that end up like Le'Veon Bell. If you go sit for a year in the NFL, boy, it's hard to come back and think you're not done. And I know he's only 25.
Chirped a lot. Aiyuk has chirped a lot on social media about this. Much more demonstrative than, frankly, Jonathan Taylor.
But that's all he can. But that's all he can do.
But I just don't see it at that level. And I know we've talked about where the Colts would fall into some sort of interest. I just think the Colts. I don't see them making this sort of pursuit. I get a lot of people say, well, duh, Kevin, they've never done that. But I also think after drafting A.D. Mitchell and giving Michael Pittman Jr. that type of money, the days of, hey, we have interest in Justin Jefferson, or, hey, we're thinking about trading up in the top 10 to draft, whatever, Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze, I think those days have kind of quieted down, and they really, especially after Mitchell flashed in the spring, and they really want to see if there's something there, and their cap space will continue to get tighter moving forward. And Bernard Ryman, in all likelihood, is due a big extension this time next year.
Do you believe so? Like, when we talk about columnists in the area. Greg Doyle wrote a piece, that went up last night, this morning, about being, one player away. You need a big trade. Brandon Aiyuk would be that guy. And then our guy, Bob Kravitz, I'm looking at his latest blog, take a big swing, Colts, take a long, hard look at Brandon Aiyuk. I guess, KB, do you feel that way? I guess it would be nice. I guess I just don't
know how you can say one player away when Anthony Richardson played less snaps than a dude named Jake Martin for the Colts last year.
I want to feel that way. I want to be able to come on here because I know it would be very popular and bash the Colts and bash Chris Ballard over, you're so close. You need to make a big move. And I want to be clear. I like Brandon Aiyuk. I just don't feel that way. And I know it's not my money, so whoever trades for him, if they give him top 5 money, again, he's very good. I don't believe he is a top 5 wide receiver. I see Brandon Aiyuk in the same vein as Michael Pittman Jr., even though they're different players. I see him in the same tier. That's fair, is it not?
I understand where you're coming from on that. They're definitely different wideouts,
sure.
But I certainly understand where you're coming from. Yeah, I would disagree with Greg on the, you're one player away, that sort of feel. I mean, we're talking about a franchise that hasn't won a division in 10 years, that has won, one playoff game in the last X amount of years as well. And now we're saying and that player is Brandon Aiyuk.
Well, the player's a wide receiver. I mean, I could look at corner and safety before even wide receiver.
And Justin Jefferson's a little different than Brandon Aiyuk, too. Yeah. I mean, if you want to play out the wideout card a little bit longer there. So, no, I can't, to your point, I think that's just, that's a, to me, that is a, hey, let's band together about Ballard's never taking a swing.
That's how
Here
I
we
feel.
go. This is sexy. This is juicy. This is, what the Colts have never done, and it would help out Richardson, and I can hear some of that, but I can't hear all of it. And, again, we still have got to, Richardson is still an unknown. There's a article I'm going to post to the website about Colts that have the most to prove this season. With Richardson, to me, when I think of most to prove, there's some element of you need to prove your health. There's some element you need to prove your NFL worthiness.
Right.
And there's some element of you need to prove your contract value. Those are kind of the 3 big items. Richardson, we're not at the contract discussion yet. I mean, he's heading into year 2 of a rookie deal. But when you talk about his NFL worthiness and his NFL availability, he's got to prove that. And, again, I mean, I mentioned it just a minute ago. I mean, literally, if you walked up to a Colts fan right now and said, tell me more about Jake Martin, they'd say, who? Who is Jake Martin? That dude played more snaps than Anthony Richardson for the Colts last year.
Right.
Jake Martin.
I mean, I'm thinking of some of the wide receivers.
Sounds like a guy on the Sigma Chi Little 500 team.
You haven't released that list to the website yet, have you?
I think it's supposed to post at some point today.
AR's on that list? Is Julian Blackmon on that list, I would imagine, as well? And he's different. His would be for NFL value, right? He needs to have a big year so he can get a contract.
Is where he would be.
Sure.
I did not. I mean, for example, to me, Nick Cross is on that list.
Yeah, sure he is.
Jelani Woods is a name on that list. It's those are some of the guys. Again, you're proving you're healthy in Woods' case. And Woods and Richardson kind of fall into a similar boat. If you want to look at Jelani Woods for a second, the end of his rookie year, Andy, he had a huge game against Pittsburgh on Monday night, Sunday Night Football. It was one of these brief individual joys in a season to forget for the Colts. It's his only game in his NFL career with more than 3 catches.
I know.
So, with Woods, it's still a bit of a fictional character. Yes, there is a little bit of a, man, he had that 8-catch, 90-yard night, and remember that. But then, and I'm at fault for this, I think at times, I think back to Woods' rookie season, and I think there's 2 or 3 more of those games. There's not.
No, there's one game. I know.
So
our analysis could be totally wrong about Jelani Woods. It really could.
Again, I guess with Woods and Richardson, it is, yes, you prove your NFL worth, and that doesn't even begin to discuss the injury question for either of those 2 guys.
Think about this. Last thing with Aiyuk. If Ballard didn't pay Jonathan Taylor and that got even nastier, the Colts, were going to be crushed over that. Everyone was going to be crushed over that. People took shots at Jonathan Taylor during that stuff. my point being is he paid Jonathan Taylor, and if, I know Monday was the deadline with all the franchise guys. We talked about that with T. Higgins with the Bengals. If that is something that lingered for all of these weeks and months and they had not paid Michael Pittman Jr., can you imagine that?
Sure.
Then let's go to the third.
Different tone.
Sure. Then let's go to April, and let's say they don't take a wide receiver in round 1, 2, 3. I mean, let's just say that every one of the, Keon Coleman's going off the board, and we just go through all of these different guys. A.D. Mitchell goes to the Bills or something like that, and we just go through all these guys, and I'm not, this is not me denouncing Anthony Gould. What was he, a fourth rounder? Fifth rounder. If they waited to the fourth or fifth round to get a wide receiver, and they gave us the rhetoric of, we believe in Alec Pierce and what he's going to be able to do with AR, we wouldn't like all of that. So, at this point, unfortunately, you get to mid to late July, it's just, it's difficult to imagine waiting that long, and Ballard wasn't going to do that. One other thing I wanted to bring up, just because I brought it up yesterday, I don't know if you saw this. So there's been a lot of scuttle, and I don't know if this is from the Raiders actually doing this, perhaps even the Jets doing this. But ESPN's Adam Schefter tweeted out last night that Kenny Chapman, who is Devontae Adams' agent, came out and said that all of the recent trade talk around Adams is baseless, unfounded speculation, and that Devontae is expected to be with the Raiders as there has been absolutely no trade talk, period. The only reason I bring it up is, there's still, you mentioned Aiyuk, Devontae Adams. I don't know if you've seen any of the wide receiver documentary that's out. There's nobody that hates his offense and that has hated his time with the Raiders more than poor Devontae Adams. And so whether you mention the Jets or a number of other teams, it is interesting. And you warned me and others of this. You get closer to the season, some bleep could happen. So Devontae Adams is still a name that, even though they're saying there hasn't been any trade talk, I'm not going to buy it until we get into the season and Adams is lined up there with the Raiders wearing the black and silver number 17.
Can someone tell Get Up that Devontae Adams is staying with the Raiders? Because this is day 2 of
Are they talking about it?
Jets Devontae Adams watch.
Oh, boy.
She was an Olympian in 2008, hailing from Indy. She'll be on the call in Paris for the Gymnastics, which I know is very appointment television for many. Sam Peszek going to join us here in about 5 minutes. Let's go ahead and do a morning checkdown.
Season tickets are on sale now. Order by August 1st for your shot at the best seats in Hinkle Fieldhouse. Visit butlersports.com/buy tickets.
All right, let's start with the Summer League, guys. 98-94, that's your final. Pacers got to get the first win there in Vegas over the Suns. Good, strong second half, came from back from behind. We talked about Johnny Furphy in that segment. He had 18 and 8. As for Jarris Walker, he played more of the two. He had 19 points, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists. And Gennaro Pargo, his coach, after the game, talked about Walker.
We want to see him guard, smaller guys, be disruptive on the ball. We thought putting him at the 2 would give us a better chance to see that. We thought he did a great job of being up in our defensive pressure. And we also try to put him in pick and rolls to see if he can make plays, not only for himself, for others, but for others as well. We thought he did a good job.
Yeah, so again, 19 points for Jarris Walker. 25, 15, and 19, his point totals the last 3 games. Summer League continues 4:30 tomorrow for the Pacers.
All right, tonight the Fever, they are 4.5-point favorite. Take care of business game. We used that phrase last Wednesday. They did not do that. They've obviously had a ton of marquee wins, and even on the road here as of late. But they're playing the worst team in the WNBA. That would be the Dallas Wings. You need to go down there and take care of business. Final game before the Olympic break, 7:30 tip tonight on ESPN. And again, the WNBA All-Star game coming up this weekend. That'll be Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, Leah Boston facing Team USA. Kind of a fun twist the WNBA doing for their All-Star game.
All right, speaking of the All-Star game, AL over the NL last night, 5-3. Do you want to hear the game-winning home run all the way in the 5th inning? Do you want to hear that?
I do not. We need to get to Sam Peszek.
You sure you don't want to hear that?
Mm-hmm.
All
Wait,
right.
who is the pitcher for that?
Mark, if you want to,
This is the guy that will take the extra base if he puts it in play, and this one may be out of play. He smacks one to right, and it is way out of here. Jaron Duran about 25 rows up, right center field, a 2-run home run, and now the American League is on top.
Yeah, Jaron Duran, he gets a 2-run home run. Hunter Green gets the loss. Again, 5-3 your final. Not a lot of
Don't
scoring.
look now, but here come the Red Legs.
To blow the lead for the National League.
Our boss not going to be happy. You guys are running late here to our next guest.
Oh, I know that's your worry. All right, last one. Team USA in action today against Serbia. That's noon on FS1. All right, I'm looking forward to this. Sam Peszek going to join us next. We'll talk some Olympics with her. We'll do it right around the corner here. 9:30 segment coming up on the Fan.
Well, you've heard that re-entry a few times here in the last week for us on the wake-up call. We did it with Cole Hawker late last week in the 1,500 meter in track and field. We did it yesterday with Allie Wilson live from London. She will be in the 800 meters. And for our next guest, Sam Peszek, we go back to 2008 for her as an Olympian, but she will have a big, big role in Paris coming up. She will be alongside Terry Gannon as a color analyst for what is always appointment television in many households, and that will be the gymnastics competition that will begin from Paris here in a little over a week. And so we turn to the Payless Liquors hotline right now, and Sam joins us. Sam, congrats on that accomplishment, first off, and a good Wednesday morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. It's still a dream come true. People keep asking me about the opportunity, about the job, and honestly, I think it's not going to feel real until I touch down in Paris, honestly.
Sam, if you don't mind, I want to go back to your days as an Olympian to start off. And I was 2 years older than you at Cathedral. I'll never forget, we have an assembly for you to send you off to Beijing. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself,
a pep rally.
Yeah, a pep rally. I'm thinking to myself, I might be the scum of the earth. Right now, I am thinking about, trying to get an air conditioner unit for my freshman year at IU. And, am I going to make friends at Indiana University? And here is this, I assume you were 15 or 16 at the time. You're going to Beijing for the Olympics. What do you remember about just, that moment at that age for you?
It's crazy being older now and looking back and how young I was. But at the time, it didn't feel that way. It felt normal. I feel like I had been used to living this quote unquote double life, if you will. And I was so grateful and lucky to have friends that I'd been friends with since first grade. So everyone was like, did people treat you differently? And I really think the answer was no. I felt so supported, and I could be a kid and be a teenager, but at the same time, pursue this dream. And so I always look back on my experience as having the best of both worlds. But yeah, looking back, I don't know how I did it, honestly.
What do you remember about the assembly? I need to know this. Oh, KB, what do you remember? You just want to get out of class.
Yeah,
that's all you care about.
I don't know. I'm sure we played the fight song. I'm sure, we all clapped for. I'm sure that music was playing. I don't know. Maybe Sam has other memories, but I just remember being in awe, frankly, of wow, we have an Olympian at our high school.
Yeah, I actually don't remember a send-off pep rally. I only remember a pep rally on coming back. So
maybe that's what it was.
I was so focused, and I think before the Olympics, things were a little bit crazy that everything is a little blurry in my memory during that time.
Again, Sam Peszek is with us. You're going to hear her as the color commentator alongside Terry Gannon coming up for the Paris Games with the gymnastics competition. Okay, during the team trials, it was really interesting to watch and follow along. It seemed like there was some open competition at the back end of the roster. We'll get to Simone Biles specifically, but could you kind of give an overview of Team USA in general and what they look like compared to some of the other best teams in the world?
Yeah, they are definitely the favorites to win a gold medal, especially with Simone Biles on the team. And reigning Olympic all-around champion Suni Lee, who has a really inspirational story overcoming kidney disease to be able to train and regain strength in order to make this team. That story alone is something that I particularly love to talk about. But the team in general has said that they did not win gold at the last Olympics and are really coming for that medal. So just hearing that drive and determination from all of them, and they're a little bit older of a group, 4 of the 5 are, and a lot of them had done college gymnastics and have had a lot of experiences internationally, that I think that they're well seasoned. They're a veteran group, and I think it's going to be a really great Olympics for this team.
Sam, it's interesting, you just talked about there at the end what I was going to ask you next. Doing some reading this morning, the women's team is the oldest since 1952. The men's team, though, is the youngest since 2012. Does that matter at all, do you think? Will that matter at all in Paris in a couple weeks?
I think answering that appropriately and with the right amount of honesty is tough, because you get into, it's really not an age thing, it's more of a health thing. But typically as you get older, your body is not as healthy. And so something that I've been really impressed with this group is how they've managed their body, not doing as many numbers and really taking care of themselves outside of the gym, which, as a 15-year-old, when I was at Cathedral, I'm not sure that there was as much education, and I was just a little bit younger. So I don't know if I did all the right things in that respect, but Simone Biles has been really open about the therapy that she's gone to outside of the gym, and Suni Lee has mentioned all of the PT that she's done. So I think all of the training they've done outside of the gym is actually what's going to make this team their secret weapon, if you will.
Sam Peszek with us, Payless Liquors Hotline on this Wednesday. She's done it all in gymnastics, and now she gets to call those games in Paris in a couple weeks. We mentioned a little bit of the world, but specifically, we want to win gold. Who are the main countries we need to watch here in a couple weeks in Paris?
I think the favorite for the silver medal is Brazil, actually. They have a really amazing athlete, Rebecca Andrade, that has so much difficulty, not quite as much difficulty as Simone Biles, but she rivals her on some of the events. So that's definitely an athlete to watch for. And then for the bronze medal, it really could be up in the air. France has a really good shot of snagging that bronze medal. There's been some injuries from the international teams, and they're not as deep as the USA team. So I'm really interested to get to Paris and to see the makeup of these international squads. But Italy, France, China's been amazing on 2 of the events, so it'll be interesting to see if they have the difficulty on all 4. I know I'm getting in the weeds a little bit for you guys, but I'm just excited for the games and all that's to come when it comes to gymnastics.
Certainly the home crowd for France, you would think would be alive and well here in a few weeks.
Yep.
Again, Sam Peszek with us here, Indy native, Olympian from 2008, and she'll be on the call alongside Terry Gannon coming up here in Paris. Sam, it's a question I'm sure you've been asked a million times, so I apologize up front, but for our audience that maybe doesn't follow the sport as closely, you hear about Simone Biles' story in Tokyo, and the word twisties comes up.
Yeah.
So for our audience that does not follow gymnastics on as frequently as a basis as you do, could you explain what she went through as best you can, and what that is like if you've ever experienced it as a gymnast yourself?
Yeah, I experienced it as a younger gymnast, and to put it frank, it's scary and it's dangerous. And the more difficult skills, the more scary and the more dangerous it is. And so I'm not personally a surfer, but when people describe getting swept away by a huge wave and not knowing which way is up and down, that's what I imagine the twisties to be like. You basically are jumping and you have no idea where you are in the air. You don't know when you're going to land. You don't know which way is up and which way is down in order to adjust. And so it's just a really scary place to be with a sport that's pretty dangerous already. And so usually with the twisties, you have to go back to the basics and not do as much difficulty for a few days or a few weeks to really get your mind right. And with Simone, it was the Olympic Games. She didn't have time to go back to the drawing board and fix that mental injury, if you will, before she was able to compete.
Did you think she would make it back, be able to come back, and then be at the top of her game like this? It's an unbelievable story.
The twisties is not a life, like a career-ending injury. And so for me, it was like, oh, does she like the sport enough to want to come back? I feel like the drive to end on a positive note, if this is going to be the end, or just to kind of redeem herself in the way, and a top athlete, I can guarantee you she was not going out there taking this lightly and just walking away from the competition. It was a really serious and hard decision for her. And so I knew that if she came back, she would take the appropriate steps. And it seems like they've minimized all the distractions that they can outside of the gym in order for her to, keep her mind locked in and keep her mind right to do these really difficult skills. So I'm not surprised that she's back. I know a lot of people were surprised, but I had a feeling that she would be back for more.
Sam, we'll end with this, and we really appreciate your time. I know you're probably looking to do a lot of things and not maybe chat with us before you head off to Paris here. for the next couple of weeks. But, your story as a 2008 Olympian is pretty remarkable. And, again, I'm sure you've been asked this many times before, but for our audience that doesn't know your full story, you head over there to Beijing, I believe, and you're an Olympian alongside, Bridget Sloan here, West Sider from Indy. Absolutely crazy story that we had too here in our own little pocket. And you get injured during warm-ups and again, correct me if I don't know these details exactly, I believe of the team competition there, and that took you out of some events if I'm not mistaken. Could you share for us and our audience in general what your Olympic experience was like from that end?
Yeah, I mean, people always ask me, did you have a lot of fun? And fun is not the word I would describe games. Rewarding and proud, and those are words I would use to describe it. But yeah, for me personally, getting hurt 5 minutes before walking out into the competition floor was not how I envisioned my Olympic journey. But I was still able to compete one event. I ended up tearing pretty much every ligament in my ankle. So not really a great place to be there, but our team ended up winning a silver medal. I was able to contribute. And so it was just a surreal experience. And so, me going back to the Olympic Games as the NBC sports reporter, I mean, this has always been a huge dream of mine. And so in a small way, I feel like I get to redeem myself in my Olympic journey, and hopefully this goes well, and I'm not tearing every ligament in my ankle right before we go on air. So
that's brutal.
It's a little redemption for me as well.
I love it. Well, Sam, thanks for the time. I'm glad this worked out. My wife and I were locked in a few weeks ago and watching you guys. Great work with the team trials. I really enjoyed your insight and your candor in describing what was going on. Really looking forward to watching you all in Paris, and I appreciate you hopping on this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show.
That is Sam Peszek right there. Again, Indy native, 2008 Olympian, and just kind of a wild story, frankly, Andy Sweeney, about her own Olympic experience. And she's great on air as well. I really enjoyed watching her for the team trials. And, again, her and Terry Gannon coming up for the Paris Games.
I love it. The Cathedral Mafia last couple weeks. I like that.
Maybe it was now she says it, maybe it was a little recap there. And boy, I just thought to myself, I mean, she's an Olympian, and like this is where I am.
Yeah, look at you.
My life.
Yeah.
Sean Johnson, do you remember that name with her?
I remember all this.
Nastia Lukin, Alicia Sacramone, part of
yes, and yes.
That team.
I mean, can you imagine injuring yourself like that? I mean, 5 minutes before you go out. I mean, I'm trying to think of another example.
Well,
I know. Go ahead.
I mean, to me, it's getting hurt before the Super Bowl.
Oh, it's what it is. Yeah.
And, again, in gymnastics case, Simone Biles and, Suni Lee and some of these other members of the U.S. women's team, they are the outliers in being able to participate in multiple games. For a lot of these, it is for gymnastics especially, it's a one cycle sort of deal. You get one crack at it, and your age is so dependent on, your ability to even compete at that highest level. And for her to get hurt 5 minutes before?
The only thing I can think of, and I feel
it
like
might be bigger than a Super Bowl, if I'm going to be totally honest, because if Mahomes gets hurt, and Mahomes isn't a good example. Anthony Richardson gets hurt before the Super Bowl this year. He's 22 years old and 21 years old, and he's still got 10 more years left, to try and get to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing of the Olympics. It's like a lot of times it's now you get one chance. You're not getting a second chance, or you have to go through the entire process of qualifying again. I feel like there's an NFL example. The only one for me, covering for years the basketball game between Louisville and Kentucky. Remember Gorgie Zhang? He played
he's a good player.
Yeah, he's a very good player. Played a decade in the NBA. I think he's now with Minnesota. I think he's with Minnesota now with their front office. He rolled his ankle by stepping on a basketball right before the game, like in pregame warmups. But I'm trying to think of another example. I'm sure the YouTube chat or Twitter will help us out, but
I not to nitpick through your analogy, but again, I mean, Gorgie,
it's a regular season game of college basketball,
and it's an annual game. Like
it's the only thing I could think of, though. That right before a game, while you're warming up, that's when the injury occurs.
I mean, it's a Hollywood story gone the other way there. So I do remember that vividly. Just her and Bridget being two. I mean, think about Team USA. There's 5 members of the team, 6 members of the team, and 2 of them hail from Indianapolis, Indiana.
It's unbelievable.
So pretty wild there. So thank you to Sam Peszek for hopping on with us again. The Olympics beginning here. I think opening ceremony is a week from Friday, if I have that right.
Yeah, cannot wait for that. We'll have it up shortly on our podcast center, 1075thefan.com. All right, I have not looked at the pop quiz other than the first 2 questions. So I have not scrolled down to 3, 4, and 5, a lot of baseball.
If you've got a decent baseball comprehension, you're going to win this.
Okay, I like that. So a lot of baseball today. We'll do a pop quiz coming up next. 317-239-1070. We'll do it next on this Wednesday on The Fan.
All right, need to go kind of quick here to round things out with the pop quiz. I said it before the break, Andy. If you have baseball knowledge, I think this is actually doable. So we'll see if the audience agrees on that end, I guess.
After yesterday in our discussion of, hey, is this guy in Major League Baseball and he's actually in the All-Star game, we would not fit the mold of winning this pop quiz, unfortunately.
Give us a number 1 through 8.
Let's do fast fingers. Let's do caller number 1 today, Mark. How does that sound?
That sounds like Kyle.
Hey, Kyle.
How we doing, gentlemen?
We are great.
Good.
We hope you are well. We hope your baseball knowledge is good. Andy Sweeney's going to toss number 1 at you.
All right, Kyle, let's get a winner on this Wednesday. Question number 1. The American League beat the NL last night 5-3 in the All-Star game. Who leads the all-time series between the AL and the NL?
Despite the last, 2 decades, I'm pretty sure the Senior League still has it, so I'm going to say National League.
You sure? You sure, Kyle?
No, American League.
The first MLB All-Star game was played in 1933. Where was that game played? Yankee Stadium, the Polo Grounds, Comiskey Park, or Cleveland Municipal Stadium?
I'll say the Polo Grounds.
Question number 3. At the MLB All-Star break, who is leading the major leagues in batting average? Christian Yelich, Shohei Ohtani, Bobby Witt Jr., Stephen Kwan.
Stephen Kwan.
Number 4 here, Kyle. Total of 5 players have been named MLB All-Star Game MVP twice in their careers. Willie Mays was the first, followed by Steve Garvey, Gary Carter, Cal Ripken Jr., and one other player who is active. Is it Mike Trout, Giancarlo Stanton, Bryce Harper, or Vlad Guerrero Jr.?
I will say Trout.
All right, question number 5. 50 years ago today, Kyle, this player became just the second pitcher in Major League history to strike out 3,000 batters in his career. Was it Nolan Ryan, Bob Gibson, Gaylord Perry, Jim Bunning?
How many years ago?
50 years ago today.
And what were the options again?
Nolan Ryan, Bob Gibson, Gaylord Perry, Jim Bunning.
I'll say Bob Gibson.
Wow. I mean,
after number 1, he did really
tell you
well.
what.
I was worried. After number 1, I thought, oh, boy.
If MLB teams can have the bullpen to close games out like Kyle just gave us there,
Wow.
they could be onto something here in the second half of the season. The last 3 correct. Stephen Kwan,
correct.
Mike Trout, and yes, Bob Gibson. Let's go!
If I'm not mistaken, Scotty, Yelich has had a revitalization this year to his career. I thought he was done for the most part. He's
326 for
he's having
him,
326. Pretty good.
American League for 1. We had to hold his hand with that one.
Great, though.
Number 2, Andy, he said the Polo Grounds.
Yeah, this was a tough one. The answer, Comiskey Park in Chicago. The AL won that one 4-2. So there you go. Otherwise, number 4 is Mike Trout. He won the MVP in 14 and 15. And Bob Gibson, the answer to number 5. 3,117 Ks for Bob Gibson.
Yeah, I said this to you earlier, and I know Joe Davis didn't have a long time to get to it last night. There was a lot on the Paul Skeens list they wanted to check off. But, his story, I don't know how familiar a lot of fans are with it. I think when you see LSU pitcher, you see number 1 overall pick, you see instant success. Frankly, you see the Instagram, influencer as
Right.
his significant other. You just assume the dude was born on third base and has been a 5-star recruit and, was a heralded guy and made a bunch of NIL money at LSU, et cetera, et cetera. And Joe Davis said it last night, the dude wanted to be a fighter pilot. Went to Air Force.
That's probably why he has a mustache.
Was
He
not
looks
a pitcher.
He looks like a fighter pilot with the mustache.
Now, quite the size to be a fighter pilot,
well,
right?
yeah, I don't know. What is he? 6 what? What is he? 6?
I would assume 6'6",
Some-
6'5", something like that.
I was
don't
going to
know.
say 6'5",
He looks
yeah.
huge out there on the mound. I think it's a really cool story.
Yeah, good for him.
And I listened to him earlier this week on Dan Patrick. Seems pretty humble and everything. So, Paul Skeens, 4 batters last night, 1 walk, and 3 outs.
Can't wait till he goes to the Houston Astros in about 3 years. If it really good into that. All right, our podcast will be up after the show, 1075thefan.com. Query and Company at noon, JMV at 3. We're back at it tomorrow. Have a good day.